think I am live. Welcome, everybody. Those joining, future, past, present. Hey, there's a few people. How are you? Thank you for joining. Yeah, short notice, guys, and hopefully I'll try to get some advance notice a little bit better on the next one. That's just kind of how I do things. Um, so before I do anything tonight, I just want to say, like, a lot of the research that I'm going to be presenting here would not have been possible had it not been for the considerable support on all levels, emotionally, financially, um, to get to these locations that I recorded this material in, that I'm going to be presenting to you here tonight in tandem with um, the overall theme. I know it seems kind of like the topic is a little bit like, your average, oh, cool, it's things about Hollywood and cool filming locations, and I wanted to appeal to people on that level, sure. But I guess I also want to discuss what is the relevance of a location um, when it comes to its influence. Why would a filmmaker who has more occulted belief systems and values select a certain location to film at? What would motivate them to film there besides just the fact that it fits, the scenery? For example, yeah, like tonight I'm going to be talking about Kaiser Steel, for example. It's a great filming location, just at a basic level of it fits the bill for lots of apocalyptic future, society in decay. There's all this like abandoned, or well, not abandoned, but just old, decommissioned steel mill equipment there, and it gives the perfect locale for filming things that are just sort of like decaying and old and whatever, I guess, and it just fits a lot of different timelines. So they've used this location, for example, to film scenes from Terminator 2, the ending scene of Terminator 2, where spoilers for those who haven't seen it. Most people, I imagine, have, who follow this material, but the Terminator that constantly keeps morphing back into, his original shape. No matter what they do, he just doesn't die. And there's a scene where he's doing battle with Arnold Schwarzenegger at the end. That entire scene is, well, I'm not sure its entirety, but I know most of it was filmed at Kaiser Steel. And the whole Kaiser Steel connection really started to get very, I guess you could say, more verifiably from my perspective. It seems to me like it's just becoming increasingly more obvious that I'm very, very close to the ecosystem behind these filming locations in ways that I was unaware of until I got to be older. So I'll explain that in more detail as we go through this, because I know a lot of people watch my channel regularly, so they're already a little bit familiar with my story. But those who aren't, I'll give you a quick background. Um, I'm a person that, well, number one, the area I'm going to talk about in Fontana, California, is where my father's side of the family all originates from, for the most part. It's like a big area where they had their homesteads. When they first arrived there, it was mostly like going back to my grandmother on his side. It was basically a big dust bowl. And so they were literally pioneers there. They were people who built this, that big section of America. They were a big part of the people that were made that a reality. And that area is very close to LA. It's close to Hollywood. It's close to all of that infrastructure. They call that area Inland Empire. They call it a lot of things, that general region of towns. It's in the San Bernardino County area. And so some of my research, just to give you a quick summary, revolved around in my how do I say it, guys? So again, I have family that's from this area in Kaiser Steel, and then when I was in the wireless industry, those unfamiliar with my background in wireless, I used to do system performance and design for wireless companies, as well as for many years I maintained. I was a field engineer, a field technician, whatever you want to call that. I had both titles, but I've done everything from repair the networks that cell towers run on. So when you go to look at those antennas that are up there, I'm a person that you can run questions by and ask things like, well, what does that antenna do, or what was its purpose, or why would they point it this way or that way? I'm the kind of guy, like, if you ever wanted to ask a question like that too, you could. Okay, just to give you an understanding. I did things like that a lot, like the Verizon commercials used to show those guys in the glasses and the black jackets that would go like, "Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?" That was pretty much my job, quite literally, for many years. Okay, and I did that for a few different companies. And when I wasn't doing field work, I did more database optimization type activities. And then I also did things relative to in building distributed antenna systems and DAS. Okay. And so the way these data sets all sort of merged to me, and I began to have a greater understanding of sort of occult belief systems, the connection between geo-referencing geolocations within Hollywood filming locations relative to occult belief systems and occult work and people who hold those belief systems. Why is it important for them to get a group of people into one location at the same place at the same time and experience something together? There's a basic science that I've discussed within my material, within my energetics material, where my personal belief is that there's a science to occultism at this level that is in the field of energetics, and that energetics would be, I think you would almost have to have a book in and of itself to try to give a basic definition of energetics. But to me, at least, energetics would be studying the relationship of the mind relative to body frequency, body energy concepts like body voltage, body electricity, your plasma field, where it transitions between what is a known material layer of blood and plasma to a more etheric layer of plasma, which within the field of energetics, I think some would argue one way or the other, but I would say that would be bioplasma. And so again, you have plasma, which is like, you can take in an IV bag and actually remove from a person and they can donate at a plasma clinic. That's one form of plasma. And then there would be bioplasma, which would be more of an etheric form of your aura or your bioenergy field. And the people that are the actors and the actresses, the producers and everything, they all have emissions of this biofield that contributes to a larger biofield that winds up becoming what is the film or the TV show or whatever it is. And it's important, I think, to discuss filmmaking at that level. And so what I'm going to do is, because I gave very little notice and it is a little bit on the late side, but it is Friday. And I know it's kind of crappy weather in a lot of different places around the country. So I'm going to give some folks some time to join, but I'm just going to kind of give you that as a quick primer for, where am I going with this? What I'm trying to do, folks, is discuss the power, I guess you could say, of Hollywood, the power of bioengineering beliefs, the power, I guess you could say, that Hollywood and the media truly holds, that it can be weaponized. It can be a form of aggressive plasma bending within the experience that we all share as a universal society of people. And so this is where the very dicey subject of where do you transition from free expression to just overt manipulation of information to change the nature of how people perceive reality and truth. That's where Hollywood is. I think I've always been fascinated by it in a way, because I think that there's many in Hollywood that really do understand what they're doing at that level. They understand that they're molding beliefs. They understand that they're shaping culture. They understand the mechanism scientifically of how that works because they're, in many cases, quite a few of them practice occulted religions, belief systems that are closer to things involving sex magic, things involving I would argue that that's probably the dominant form of it. I think that most of them get introduced to these mechanisms through various forms of sex magic, but I think that there's another dark side to it that involves the sacrifice culture, and this is the more unknown aspect of what a lot of people. Um, I think this is where things have kind of gone on overdrive as far as what we're experiencing in physical reality. That once you understand the nature of the plasma field and what they're doing with it and bending it, then then it becomes then you have to start to really become more conscientious and aware of the information that you take in and consume. And this is what I've really I've been kind of challenged with, I guess you could say, in the process of me reviewing a lot of material to decipher or decrypt it, things that Hollywood puts out. To what degree am I sort of allowing something in to my psyche and my subconscious that is, potentially, again, I don't think I allow anything to be harmful just because I have a really good filter and everything else like that. But at the same time, these works oftentimes have a hidden energy and a hidden power to it. And I try to, like, within my material, discuss that more at a scientific level and less at a foo-foo kind of shocking and salacious, like, look what they're doing with this, man, it's bad. Well, I don't necessarily think it's always bad. But at the same time, well, what, bad is bad, right? Bad behaviors are bad behaviors. What I mean to say, though, is consciously bending the plasma field, I guess, when people are trying to manipulate people's perceptions in one way or the other to quite literally change physical matter, change the reality that we experience. That's when I think that if you don't give it the kind of credit that it deserves to be given, you won't recognize its power, and that power has its roots in more occulted belief systems that are closer to what some would call witchcraft. Okay, quite frankly. And you can roll your eyes at that all you want, but it's been practiced for centuries. They had things like the Salem witch trials, not just because a bunch of people were freaky and didn't didn't have a understanding of what was going on. No, it's a pretty complex thing when you really get down to it. There's a lot of people that for many centuries have understood that there's a way to consciously change people's perception of reality through the use of various forms of electromagnetic fields. And it's just simply that it's transitioned from exploiting natural locations, for example, getting somebody to go into a cave that they're conscious and aware can change their energy field, but the person who's entering it may not know that, or to get them to enter into a home or a building that has somehow been constructed to channel energy from underground that they know it has a more well, when I say menacing energy, let me define that more specifically. Areas where you may find these like very low level, extremely low frequency fields that kind of feel like your eardrums are being ruptured a little bit, and they're very disruptive. It's like ripples kind of going through your body. um, these can be very damaging to a person's physiology, and especially if you're not accustomed to these types of fields and energies being entrained upon you. Maybe the way I'll get this started, I guess, a good way to do this is to sort of show people how Hollywood and even reality television, in the process of trying to change our perception of reality, oftentimes they delve into something where they cross a line themselves, I think. And whether this was made up or not, I really don't know. But I think that, like, the Ghost Adventures group, Zach Bagans and those guys, this was more Zach Bagans on his own, the creator, or I guess one of the main founders of Ghost Adventures, a show that's been on for, I guess, like about a decade or so. I used to watch it, when it first came on because I was kind of, had a, I don't know, basic interest in things that were more realistically paranormal. Like if somebody claimed to be kept capturing evidence, I guess what I like to do is put on my engineer hat and also try to debunk it respectfully, because I do tend to believe these things can happen, but I'm also very quick to debunk things that I know, are rooted in, nonsense, to put it bluntly. So I think maybe because I wasn't planning on doing this, I think playing the Demon House clip might actually be a good way to just to sort of like maybe get some other folks in on the discussion, and then I'll transition from that material into something that I can tell you I was experiencing when I revisited Fontana, California, earlier in 2021. Again, sorry, I kind of got distracted there a little bit in the beginning. Again, a big thank you to the folks, since I have more folks on now. I want you to know that, whether you're currently in my life or you were some of the people that were supporting me back then, and watching or more actively helping out with things day to day, I greatly appreciate, everything that you did and do, um, and continue to appreciate you for all of the efforts to get me from place to place, because a person can't get this much type of research done alone. And sometimes I always talk about how I'm alone doing this, or I do this by myself and everything like that. And yeah, I guess physically I was alone most of the time, but I was never really alone. I've always had support, whether it was the type of, intuitive communication type things and the tips that I would get from that type of, those efforts from people from the sidelines, and which are very much valued. Or it was the tangible things and 3D reality type things that I think we all agree can help. People just helping me get from place to place, have, somewhere to do my work and research, even if it seemed like it was something kind of silly. If you understand the type of research that I do, sometimes it just involves actually determining how, a television series or a film, based on its actors and actresses and the combination of these elements, the same way that you would almost create something unique out of combining like silver and iron and whatever else and a little bit of gold plating, and like you would create this other metal or this new type of alloy with its own type of strength. I mean, that type of alchemy exists, I guess, is all I'm trying to say within the filmmaking industry. And so, the reason why I think this Demon House clip is fascinating. Sorry to deviate a little bit off topic there. I just want to make sure I finish that point. Um, is because I really felt like, regardless of what you think of what goes on within these paranormal reality TV shows, like, are they making these things up? Are they engaged in reality manifestation? Are they exaggerating some evidence? That kind of thing. Well, you have to sort of at least, understand that whether those factors were true or not, the one thing that I'm certain of, and I think that Zach Bagans got reminded of acutely, was that, that these buildings can have an energy that you may not have an understanding or grasp on, and that if you're not aware, if you're not like actually respecting that, if you're not actually taking note of what you're getting measurements wise and saying like, wow, there might be something going on in this building that's causing me and whatever else some problems here, then it could cause you some problems that are either, strictly physical. In the case of Zach Bagans, he actually got permanent eye damage as a result of being in the building where the Demon House was filmed. So these energies are no joke, guys. Like when they're actually able to physically cause you, something beyond just nausea or the average sickness that you hear people report from things like sonic weapons or ultrasonic frequencies. When the ELF energy in tandem with something else that's a little bit less known, like what was it that hit him that really got him? um, you know, that's when you're starting to delve into something where the buildings and the architecture have a life, and that you're not respecting that in the way that you should. And those energies tend to like jump out and whatever, right? And so that's kind of, what that's about, really, is that is that the Demon House isn't just your average, documentary that way. It did have quite a bit of good, tangible measurements that were going on within the documentary. I haven't watched it in a few years, but I do remember it being, better than average quality for what it was, and then actually kind of being impressed with some of the measurements that were taken. So I'm going to play that really quick. Let me get it up here really fast. Let's see. All right. Almost there. About the Demon House that was discussed in Zach Bagans and the Ghost Adventures creators documentary called Demon House. And basically, is this history that had a long past of demonic possessions. People like reported on it in mainstream news and things like that. Just had a bad history, and he decided to buy it sight unseen and do a documentary on, what it was like. What he took some signal readings in there and things like that. So the whole story kind of fascinated me because not everything about Ghost Adventures, like, I think that my approach, I think personally, to like these types of issues would probably be to be, quieter, I think, in the investigation, but what I've always like sort of appreciated about what Ghost Adventures does is just their concentration on technicals and gathering data. So maybe the method isn't the way that I would do it, but I do appreciate how they introduced me to a lot of things involving, scientific method and introducing that into what they were doing with the paranormal, because that's really important to have more people doing that, and explaining their techniques and things. So I think that what's great about the Demon House documentary is that they specifically bring, I can't remember his name, but they brought in somebody to do research there and brought in a meter that measured the ELF signals inside the basement and everything. And I observed it, it dropped down to 1 hertz, which would cause, some pretty serious physical symptoms if you study these types of things involving, EEG and brainwave states and things like that. I mean, yeah, you could definitely tell that when you go down to their basement in that Demon House, something really changes energetically. So I think these are the types of things that we need to start focusing on, applying some scientific method to. But see, so what Zach Bagans and that the guy who did the signal measurements were doing, that was great. That introduced us to the concept of getting that signal measurement. But see, now there's an esoteric angle to it that, maybe we haven't discovered yet. And so that's what I want to get into next. So I'm going to start a video here and I'll be right back. So this is the Astoria column. And if you'll notice here, I drew a line at 33 degrees. I don't want to get too deep into it. You can look at my Secret Societies clip that I showed in the beginning of this presentation. And that gets in more detail on how to run these lines. But from the Astoria column in Astoria, Oregon, it's on the Washington-Oregon border. You basically will anchor it to the Astoria column. You line up your heading at 33 degrees. And if you notice, I did one at 213. I also do it at east and west line. You can do north and south if you want to, but for this presentation, I'm just focusing on those directions. And so as you notice, I kind of go out south, rather northeast towards Seattle, Washington area. Then it lands in Bothell, Washington, where I've done a lot of my other presentations involving, my childhood there and some of the connections I have to that neighborhood. So it's really interesting that that blue line pretty much goes right over my childhood home. I mean, literally, it's right there. That's where I was raised compared to that blue line. So, and then I did a lot of stories. My grandfather was at the end of the block there, had 2 homes. So anyways, that's another story. But yeah, I did some stories about this too. So kind of strange that it lines up perfectly with this, part of my, childhood and everything else like that at precisely 33 degrees, because that's a meaningful azimuth of Mason. So then if you follow this over to Richland, Washington, a place that has a lot of history with the Hanford Nuclear Reservation, they have a pretty, historic Freemason lodge up on the hilltop in Richland, Washington, just a few miles away from Hanford Nuclear Reservation. It also has very esoteric connections. Again, you line up the line at 33 degrees and 213 degrees. And I also did one that goes east and west too. So it's interesting that this Freemason lodge lines up for me personally. It lines up to at the 33 degree line. where I went to school and everything like that. But so yeah, you'll see that I kind of did like a 33-degree line and a 90-degree line here, and then if you kind of rotate the map though, and you split the difference between that 213-degree, 33-degree line, right, and the one that faces towards the Astoria column, it goes directly in between them. I did another article on this, and I talked about this in my Miles Johnston with the Basis Project interview just recently. It goes right to Stonehenge. It's a replica of Stonehenge. It was built by Sam Hill. He was kind of a Quaker legend out here in Washington and Oregon area. Built a lot of legendary monuments and things like that along the Washington-Oregon border. And it's beautiful out there. It's the Columbia River Gorge, but has a lot of significance. It's up on a hilltop. You can see there's the Stonehenge. Yeah, check this out. Check this out. I got to show you this. Okay, so hang on. All right. Let me see if I can zoom in on the zoom in. That right there, guys, like, you want to talk about some, things involving, like, okay, to me, this is like, when I discovered everything about Mary Hill Stonehenge on the Washington-Oregon border, this completely just changed my perception of like what we exist in within physical reality. This was a little bit like having an epiphany. It was a little bit like having like, no, it's not a little bit. This is just like, you feel like you're finally, it's whatever, it's godly. I don't know what else to tell you. There's whatever it's tapped into. It involves something where you become conscious and aware that what we exist in could not possibly have happened without the intervention of something, someone, someone's, some greater entity, entities, persons, gods, whatever your personal thing is. If you believe it's Jesus, then okay. If it's Allah, okay. If it's Buddha, whoever, I don't know. What I'm saying though is that what I became aware of is none of this could have possibly happened without the intervention of something that's looking down upon us. It is able to review all of our activities. It seems to be, how else do I say it? Time doesn't exist at the same level to them. It doesn't, I don't think whatever this is that reviews what we're doing, they exist beyond centuries. They exist beyond whatever and are watching all of this. And a lot of it is part of a larger plan. And once you learn these links that exist where you're drawing lines to lines that are oftentimes at these, and again, it's not exclusively 33 degrees. They're 3, sometimes they're 333-degree lines. They're angles and azimuths that dial in like a sundial, right? So you go to that Mary Hill Stonehenge and, excuse me, I'm telling you, that monument connects to things globally. It connects to the Vatican. It connects to a pyramid in Russia. It connects to, it literally goes right to the freaking Vatican, you guys. It's bizarre how much it goes to that arrow that points, the needle that points in the Vatican. It goes almost right to the center of it. It's bizarre how many alignments this thing has. Using these 33, 123, 303, 333. Again, anything that's either a 333, a 303, a 33, or the opposite angle, which is 180 degrees opposite of it. So you just take 180 off. So again, like if you're dealing with the number 303, you take 180 off, what you end up with, right? So, all right. The point is that once you start running these angles and noticing the alignments globally, like I started seeing things like the Bosnian pyramids would line up with locations where like with like Bruce Lee films and things like that. And then I would notice very strange things like a monument or a statue being erected to Bruce Lee in an area near Bosnia that I was like, why would they do something like that? That is the most random place for them to construct a statue to Bruce Lee. Yet then I learned that this film, the Fists of Fury that he made in Macau, actually was done in a garden. There's this iconic fight scene in it, and in the garden, if you aim the 33-degree angle, it also aligns with a whole bunch of these things. It's really bizarre, folks. Like once you start running these 33-degree lines, and again, this existed long before Freemasonry. So yeah, do I discuss Freemasonry? Of course. I mean, but all I'm telling you that what Freemasons have done is tapped into something that existed before them. They're conscious and aware, I think, at the high levels of what I've discussed with you here earlier, is that regardless of your belief system, guys, I'm not making an argument for one or the other. I'm saying that regardless of it, what I believe a lot of this information should do, if you have a more positive mind, if you have a more constructive mind, or if you're more wired towards optimism and what you can do to actually bring things into manifestation as far as like good things, or like, are you working actively to create the most positive outcomes that you can, or are you taking a more pessimistic approach and tearing things down? I think because of what's going on right now, I think a lot of people that are normally drawn towards optimism, a lot of times they're finding that part of them is being torn down aggressively. I've experienced it, folks. So the best thing I can tell you is that please, the best we can do to like keep one another on track, to stay in a more positive mind state. Let's try to. I mean, again, I have help. I have considerable assistance in that regard, and the more people can do that for one another, I would say, yeah. Sorry, guys. I'm noticing some of this. Sometimes they'll use like fake Russian bots inside my channel to troll me and everything like that. And how embarrassing it is that they actually make words out of the fake Russian characters is kind of funny. So, anyways, it's obvious to anybody who would be looking, but I'll leave it alone right now. It's funny. Oh my God, it's getting embarrassing for these hackers. But all right, guys. Back to the material though. All right. So I'm playing this for you so that you kind of understand that, like, that Mary Hill Stonehenge, it's this concept that I'm discussing. That's a great place to try it out, where you simply just go to the center of some place that you know is geographically significant. You use Google Earth, that line tool that you see right here. You see this line tool on Google Earth? You just go into Google Earth and you click that, okay? Right there. You click that line tool, go to the center of a location like that, and then you just start running the 33-degree line all the way around the globe from the location that you found, okay? It takes some practice. You got to like whatever, and then it's interesting to find out where it leads. Like you're going to be really tripped out sometimes when you find, like, within your own situation, you're going to ask yourself, like, how does that synchronize the way that it is? There's something else that's going on here that I'm tapping into. And I think that it's almost like what I'm learning about this 33 thing is that when it comes to this line, this angle, that it's like a bioenergetic thread, like a tunnel system or a highway system where information is binded to in the aether, and that we can all access it if we have an awareness of it and understanding of it. Then it begins to sort of be like almost like the law of attraction. It begins, like, the information just flows and flows, and you begin to tap into these bioenergy lines in ways that are, to be quite honest with you, at times quite spooky. It's just like the synchronicities will absolutely, if you're new to it, will freak you out. You will well, look, I don't want to say, maybe you'll go like, wow, I love this. I mean, at times it can be really fun. At other times you're kind of like going, all right, it's just too much. I can't handle one more synchronicity today. Make it stop. But yeah, you will experience an increase in synchronicities like nobody's business the more you study these types of things and have an awareness of it. And the more you understand how it works and operates, and the more you do this, I hypothesize, Yeah. And so I would say that sure, you can look into it, and I'm not going to discourage anybody from looking into it. If anything, I think it's a, if you're kind of know what you're doing and everything, great. But yeah, kind of know what you're doing. You are going to learn some things that might freak you out in the process of running these energy lines. That's what I call them. These red lines that you see where you go to the center and you point them out, they're energy lines. And I think the reason why they operate this way is because they're just tapping into the fundamentals of the spiral of the Fibonacci sequence. And so really basically, hang on here, let me get this on the screen really quick. I'll get back to the video in just a second here, but I want to show you what I'm talking about, why I think films and television series, because they're all tapping into this Fibonacci spiral. Okay. And so anytime that like you put a film on a reel or put a tape inside you know, like a VHS tape or a Betamax or whatever they have, or DAT tapes, 8mm, whatever they've got. Okay. All of these things have to operate. They go around in a circle. Reel to reel tapes go around in a circle. Okay. Magnetic cassette tapes you used to put inside your car, reel to reels, 8-track tapes. They all go in these magnetic spirals, always magnetic. They always involve magnetism, always. The recording of the very imprint of the person's voice always involves the magnetism of the microphone, the pickup of the microphone, and the coil, the spiral coil that empties into it. I tell you, I learned even more I learned from two people on this topic in particular. I think it would behoove you to read. And thank you to the person that recommended Preston Nichols. I think it's called Music of Time. Yeah, Music of Time. That one explains this really, really well. This whole and it's a weird book, guys. I mean, you have to have a very open mind and be at least open to his more esoteric stories to like be able to get the science of everything else that he's talking about. But you'll start to understand parallel realities, magnetic loops and spirals, and bioenergetics at a much, much more deep level. You know, with that one. And I would also credit like Valery Uvarov, his research. He has the Wands of Horus website, and that there's an article called "The Mechanics of Negative Energy" that I think explains a lot of these things quite well when it comes to the more negative forms of what can be done within this spiral and this loop. And for example, if you look at a minaret that's in a lot of churches, for example, with a spiraled staircase, that's why the Astoria column kind of fascinates me. You have to take a spiral staircase to get to the top. It has windows that have like ports out the side, almost like it's a flute that plays, where you can alter the patterning of the, you know, the audio or the wind or whatever based on the open ports within the minaret. Things like that he discusses in a lot of his articles, beyond just the mechanics of negative energy, that I would say really helped me understand this at a much deeper level. So I want to make sure that I point that out. But this whole concept of the Fibonacci spiral I've had in the back of my mind for a long, long time, and that this is something that I think in tandem with everything else, what you're dealing with here is because all people have eventually are, whether you like it or not, you're forced into a perception of numbers and counting. I mean, it is kind of a more universal language. Even if none of us speak the same language, my guess is if all of us had to build something together, not knowing the same language, and not even say we couldn't even learn each other's language. I think the one thing that we could all eventually agree on is if you could just have somebody kind of grunt and point at a 5x5 block, like it's right here, you know, they go, "Argh," and they go, "Oh, you mean that green colored 5x5 one?" And you point over there, and you're like, stack all of those right over there. You're like, "Mm-hmm." And then they're like, "Oh, okay," and make more of those, and you show them. You know, if you think about it, guys, like how are things really built amongst people that couldn't communicate on the same level or the same language? You know, I mean, the Fibonacci sequence even gets into the basics of construction. It gets into the basic building blocks of making a building when you're just forming like like the architecture of the room, a 5 by 5 room, an 8 by 8 room, a 13 by 13 room, a 21 by 21 room, for example. And where within this house that you see constructed here, and this, like, say this is one square rectangular house, right? Well, I would argue right there, you're going to find that within any of them, right, that pattern is going to be there within the basic blueprint and architecture. And then once you observe it, that it's there within the basic idea, all right. The foundation of it is the Nautilus pattern, even within that square that's filled with a lot of, or that rectangle that's filled with a lot of these squares. But they all eventually wind up in the spiral that is the Fibonacci sequence, which is that infinite loop and spiral that just keeps going and going and going. So 5 by 5 plus 8 by 8 equals 13 by 13. Then you see the math there. 8 by 8 plus 13 by 13 equals 21 by 21. So logically, you guys, obviously, if you're not familiar with this already, then you know that 13 by 13, 21 by 21 is going to amount to 34 by 34 on the next block. That's going to be the next one in the Fibonacci sequence. And then again, you're going to be adding the 21 plus the 34 to get your next block. And then you keep going like that, always finding its way into everything. And so I believe that what's going on here within films and in georeferencing of these locations is it's a binding of plasma, an understanding of information, and the shared experience these people have within the screenplay or the script, and what its larger esoteric meaning is, and what is left anchored in the soil of where they filmed. And I was really figuring this out as I was visiting locations where things had been filmed early this spring. This would have been, around, what was it, like, I can't remember the exact months, but it was in that February, March, April time frame. I think February, March mostly, probably March. But the more I think about it, it was like February, March-ish when a lot of that was happening. And I started to make my way between Maryhill, Stonehenge, over to the Oregon coastline, went all the way down to the California coast, following the entire coastline pretty much the entire way. And again, making a huge part of everything that I did was mirroring, not like a cult mirroring, but in the sense that I'm mirroring is that I'm physically visiting multiple locations where films were made, all kinds of them. I mean, I literally went to dozens of them, and it wasn't like I was doing this like as some like over and over again, like, hey, isn't it cool? This is where this was filmed. No, it was because of the bioenergy links. It's because these are films that I watched on VHS tape oftentimes. For example, like watching some crappy horror film over and over again as a kid, like maybe you watched the Halloween film or Nightmare on Elm Street or something else like that. Then what is the effect, I guess, bioenergetically? Like, what kind of energy are you tapping into at the grid level when you visit a location where a film like that was made, but you yourself, when you were living someplace that you were aware had a strong like quartz concentration? Because I think that's what happened to me growing up, where I watched a lot of these films that I wound up visiting last year, their filming locations. There's something about the way that I took in the information as a child, watching the films over and over again, like these, RoboCop, Elm Street. They weren't always like, as I mostly like comedies, to be honest with you. So I'm not sure why they tend to be the horror film, because I wasn't really even that much into the horror genre. I had like I don't know, kind of a thing where I thought some of them were kind of cool or whatever, but it wasn't really my preferred go-to. I kind of grossed out by most of them. I started liking comedies mostly, and then like action comedies and things like that when I was in that age range. But for some reason, though, these movies that I watched over and over again, or television series, when I went back and visited these locations, it was bizarre, the types of like synchronistic activities that would occur, or things that I would experience. A good example is I watched the Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys television series quite a bit as a young child. This would have been the one that was in the 70s. And it starred Pamela Sue Martin as Nancy Drew. and then it was like Parker Stevenson, and I think I forget which Cassidy. There's two Cassidys that were popular. Hell, I can't remember one of the Cassidys. David Cassidy? Yeah, I think it's David Cassidy, Parker Stevenson, or the Hardy Boys. Anyways, um, but yeah, I was really into these Nancy Drew ones, and when I was younger, and um, for some reason it really stayed anchored in me, like the memory of the opening theme song, and I just had a very strong memory of it. Why it left such an imprint, I really don't know. It's like there's other television series, some very bizarre television series that left a very strong imprint on me, that now when I revisit them, I'm like, it's so strange. Different strokes. I mean, again, remember with Arnold and Willis, what you talking about, Willis? You know, the world don't move to the beat of just one drum. Yeah, like what I just did, the loop, the magnetic loop of recording that song, me mimicking the loop of that song, and then putting it into a digital medium like this within the physical location. Sean Cassidy, thank you. Within the physical location that I'm in, that has like this sort of resonant echo energy effect. If you think about it, you know, again, it has the same effect as an incantation within ritual work. I'm not performing a ritual. It's just that I've learned like what people that practice ritual magic are experiencing. I did it without realizing that I was like even like in that realm of belief systems or whatever. Like just by, do you understand kind of what I'm going with this? Hopefully you guys kind of understand what I'm saying. It's like by visiting these locations, it's almost like you're sort of re-experiencing something that a whole bunch of the people whose biofields have, like they have emissions that are left behind. Again, these actors and actresses, the thing I've learned is that you are physically anchored to every location you visit because you're always generating bioplasma. And that bioplasma is fed into the quartz and crystalline structure because part of the way we receive the 3D projection that we exist in is through crystal concentrations within the earth. And that crystal concentration is in constant communication with the pineal gland in the human brain, which is surrounded by piezo-responsive crystals. This is one of the reasons why I think people have to take, you know, electromagnetic issues a little bit more seriously now, because what I think is really going on right now, folks, the reason why there's been so much manipulation of people's biofields and like aggressive use of electromagnetic weapons on people, especially I've been hearing way more reports the last year than even I did before of people that are experiencing this phenomenon, that it's, I think in my estimation, it is a aggressive attempt to magnetically vibrate a different reality into they're trying to resonate it into physical reality through our pineal glands. It's like the people that really understand this, guys, it'll be the detriment of the United States as a military. Honestly, it'll be a detriment to you if you don't understand what I'm telling you. You need to pay attention to this. I'm serious here. If you don't begin to understand this, another country can very easily take over by simply backdooring things that manipulate our bioenergy fields in aggressive ways, because we just buy cheap products from different countries without any awareness about what types of backdoor hacks could be brought in. Okay, so you could be putting out things within the power infrastructure that use, for example, cheap Chinese parts or from some other country. I mean, we don't want to always point the finger at China when it comes to these things, but the fact is, guys, that we have just an enormous amount of like electronic infrastructure, and I'm just observing over and over again that, well, though we definitely have people within this country that would be incentivized to manipulate people's electromagnetic fields aggressively, to me, if you don't get this at an industrial scale, like why it might be happening, and that the source of it could be something that's even external from the United States, that this could be something that you could do from a very tall location that had line of sight to many places within the United States. Um, that's all it would require, really. And then from there, it's just the ability to focus on human targets using other types of things involving ionospheric bounce and other exotic methods of entrainment to basically change the biofield of people. And then if you understand this, folks, and please, I mean, especially folks like at a defense level, you can't mock this, and you shouldn't. You should take me seriously, because I'm really trying to form partnerships with people that can grasp what I'm talking about and have the resources. Because guys, even if you don't want to like fund me, I need gear and equipment to effectively prove out a lot of the things I'm telling you, which I can. I need not just equipment, but I need talent. People that can think beyond things that I can think again, and then use the equipment and make the measurements beyond things that I'm even capable of understanding, and people who could explain certain things to me. But I know the right questions to ask and the right measurements to take and the right types of environments to test it in. So what I'm telling you is that, yeah, what I think is going on here, guys, is we have something that is a weaponized form of psychotronic. Well, okay, it is industrial scale weaponized psychotronics. Psychotronics in the sense that it is designed to specifically attack human consciousness and the hive mind and the collective consciousness through aggressive entrainment of pineal glands, okay, which can be piezoelectrically responsive remotely. Who's doing it, how they're going about doing it, I honestly don't have all the answers on that. I wish I did. People want to point the finger at this and that and say it's this type of technology and that. What I can tell you is it has been more aggressive and more people have been discussing it lately. But you've also seen, I think, an increase in launching of satellites. Things that allege to be data communication satellites are there to be doing something with some sort of global internet, oftentimes, or the ability to deliver data signals down to the earth. A concept that I find a bit dicey, to be honest with you. I really don't understand how that's a viable model of internet. Honestly, it just seems to me it's like I've really tried to wrap my head around it. And again, I'm not a satcom engineer. I've never understood satellite communications. It's not my field. My field was towers. Okay, I knew things that pointed down towards the ground and had certain angles and certain azimuths and beam widths. I knew about horizontal beam, vertical beam, all those types of concepts. But no, I wasn't a person that understood satellite communications beyond installing a digital, like television, like Dish Network or Direct TV or something. Okay. But what I think is going on, though, is that it's designed, I think, to attack us at a genetic level as a country. If it's happening internally, I think that they have foreign partners. I have an idea of how that's working, only because the only way that this could occur would be through again, and I've received tip offs, and I just have my own awareness about who works where and what interests they have, folks. But yeah, the best thing I can say is that it's designed basically, I think, through the manipulation of the information that we're receiving day to day, in tandem with a aggressive piezoelectric attack on a pretty large scale to a lot of different people who just don't understand what's happening to them, and they may attribute some other type of illness or ailment to it instead of what it is. And what those people from those genetic groups are and what they represent are people that I think are super delegates within the bioenergy field spectrum, which is to say some people push out more bioplasma than others. And those people would probably be selected to have this done to them more aggressively if they were not feeding into a narrative that the people who would be seeking to change our biofields wish to have us believe. So if you have an alternative narrative that you're accepting, then the weapon effectively would be designed to aggressively try to get you to change your mind and to physically bend your perception of reality until your mind was changed. And that would be done through literal mechanisms of piezo responsive signals that like attack the pineal gland at the extremely low frequency level. But it would go way deeper than that, because the things that I've both personally experienced and have heard other people witnessing it does appear to like make it a very aggressive cluster attack in a very, well, how do I say it? There's times where you can get some very specific patterning to it when you close your eyes, and like you like can close your eyes and like it just makes this very strong form of like either like rotating cluster light. That this I kind of know the origins of. I think that's done through some type of Tesla wand, weaponized Tesla wand, like a bad concept involving Tesla wands, where it just constantly aggressively attacks your bioenergy field. And because because people don't really I think because people don't really take it seriously that we have one, even though it's provable and measurable. They don't really it's hard to get those people to believe in a weapon that's doing it, let alone like what the mechanisms would take to sort of research it and then defeat it. And it's discouraging because I'm acutely aware that it's happening in the United States to our own population. How you fix something that's this insidious and everything like that without the help of people that it's their jobs to basically be in charge of it. They won't fund it themselves, and they also won't take responsibility for investigating the numerous cases of people that complain about it. And so I feel like, I have people, again, lately I've had more and more inquiries about this exact topic. And my problem is, folks, is that I really don't like to get involved, just so you know, involving like the day-to-day things. I'm going way off topic here, folks, but part of what I'm telling you here involving the psychotronic aspects, guys, is the it's exploiting, I guess you could say, the connection between Earth brainwave and human brainwave to structure the reality that we all exist in. That if you accept what the Defense Intelligence Agency, well, it wasn't DIA, it was the Army, I think, that developed a report that was based on findings partly from the Monroe Institute, and it's called the Gateway Experience. This is a report that I found really compelling. It's only 30 some pages, I think, and it's a very good read. It might be longer than that, but it's honestly, it's filled with illustrations and it's very easy to understand. But it talks about what I'm saying here but you can apply it to the film industry, okay? That we exist in a universal plasma field and that there is no solid matter. And that once you accept that, then you'll understand that the very earth that we're standing on is basically a product of our own manifestation. We are creating what we are, what we exist in constantly. So if you don't get this concept, like if religious dogma prevents you from understanding it, which I hope it doesn't, because in my mind, guys, to me, the beauty in all this is that this should help you understand why the situation is so challenging. It's because so many people do aggressively have such varying degrees of belief systems as far as how we actually came into physical reality. And so when so many different groups across the entire world that even disagree on the very nature of physical reality, it's kind of hard to structure some order around the concept, right? Not trying to talk about the concept of order and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I'm not going there. But you guys kind of understand, hopefully, where I'm going with that to some degree, is that there is this complex relationship that I think Eastern cultures, especially like in India, in China, and other Asian countries, Japan understands this, Korea, their population understands this. Asians, I would say, especially really seem to grasp it. Any culture that understands acupuncture understands like why placing a needle at a specific energy center on the body actually opens something up energetically within it actually increases like an energy flow, and suddenly, like, I'll give you an example, guys. Like they've actually done tests where with an acupuncture, and this is inside these reports that the military studied, that they studied the flares using Karelian photography, a concept designed by the Russians that the Americans were very, very concerned about within these Defense Intelligence Agency reports. That they were studying people in Karelian photography, and they could see the flares of energy when you placed an acupuncture needle on somebody's back. I mean, do you understand like how here these things all become like functions of sort of like Southern California, what do you want to call it, like indulgence, sort of like when, yes, I simply must have these little needles placed in my back to free my energy centers, and then I have to go get a high colonic and all these other, it becomes like a thing where it's like something you can mock because it's like supposed to be like a for this elite class of people just doing it because they can afford it, right? Which a lot of times they'll even do it wrong almost intentionally, just simply because they don't want people to really understand how it works, and they do want people to foolishly spend a lot of money on something that doesn't actually work the way they're doing it. The concept is valid, but not the way that it's being done in the West. Hence why we're in the mess that we're in, is because we don't, and I really believe this, folks, it's because of our culture's inability to understand something that's been in our own backyard, Hollywood, to not understand the nature of what it does. You won't understand the nature of what's going on to everybody right now psychotronically. Okay. And how whatever's going on right now, they had partners external. And so it seems to me what's might be going on here, guys, based on the reports that I'm getting and things that I've experienced, is that somebody that's a domestic partner of a foreign partner, okay, they have the ability to entrain something on people from another countries potentially, and vice versa, where it's like they're not held accountable for doing it because they're not allowed to do it to their own people, so they get the other country to do it to their people. Who is sicking that thing on Americans? That would be interesting. Tracing it out, that would require more equipment, that would require a greater team with more sophistication. And so today, even folks, just sorry to go off topic, but I'm going to do a quick commercial here since I'm already off topic anyways. Yeah, I mean, I'll say this again, and I orated this out loud because I was kind of like, because I was going to do a clip on this at some point, but I just wanted to like offer that to people. I need to structure a group that's like, I can't care about these other things, guys. If everybody else wants to argue about like whether or not 5G is healthy or unhealthy, that's y'all's business. That's the best thing I can say about that. I I mean, I would be happy to participate in a study that does that objectively, but I'm also concerned right now about things that are affecting people at a much more direct level that quite honestly, like I need partnerships from people that would be at wireless companies in order to solve a lot of the things that are happening right now that are really damaging our country. And so I can't tell you that I really want to get excessively into that debate any more than I already have, because I feel like I've given people like facts that say like, all right, if you're a person that believes it's quote a weapon, there's data to support it. There is data to support what you're saying, that frequency used in a way that increases the amplification, changes the antenna type, and is just aimed to specifically focus on a person, can in fact be pretty harmful if it's integrated into quote 5G evolutions. If somebody makes a decision to say like, well, here's one band that has nothing to do with communication and everything to do with just aiming at people's heads. Psychotronically, guys, right now, what I'm telling you, everything like what I'm telling you could become a reality. There could be people within America that just simply set up with no guys. This doesn't have to have anything to do with an AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, anything like that. This could be done separate from that. I'll tell you how. There's like a band like 60 gigahertz that's like an open band that can be used for like, I guess, extremely high frequency Wi-Fi. I believe I might need to like verify that a little bit because that was a long time ago that I read that. But they were talking about putting these like open 60 gig, the same way right now you can do 2.4 and 5.8 gig Wi-Fi. Okay. You're talking about having this 60 gigahertz band of Wi-Fi that was going to be more of the focused beam type. Well, guys, like it's one thing when you're 2.4 gigahertz because that kind of spreads the signal all over the place. It's just like it's everywhere. Okay. You're not really aiming it at a really focused spot, because when you get into those EHF beams, they're just like squiggle, 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 and they're really designed to like aim in very limited areas. And again, depending on the antenna types you use and everything else like that, that can change. I get it, but it leaves it open to where if a person just simply wanted to use what's called an open frequency that nobody can reserve, it's designed for open use, just like your Wi-Fi router can use the 2.4 and 5.8 gig bands, but see, so can your neighbors. And that's the problem, that if you don't, there's no channel coordination because it's all open. Okay. Now, to me, this is almost like where there's the danger in it, because then somebody could just simply put into a public park to go like, well, maybe this is the solution to the homeless problem. Maybe when they don't want a homeless person to hang out inside the park, they just start to aim these 60 gigahertz antennas, because guess what? Now the specificity of the beam is way, way greater. You can go and just like nail in on their skull. Okay. Whereas before, if it was like a 2.4 gig, I mean, yeah, you could do this beam shifting, beam forming. There's ways to get creative and do, I know, guys, there's exotic ways of doing this and that. But once you do these 60 gigahertz and up bands that are like really squiggle type beams and everything, now you're getting into the same types of frequencies they use for the active denial system that was developed by Raytheon. And that was just designed to basically just go, be mounted on a vehicle, a Humvee, point the dish, multiple targets can be entrained upon at the same time. The antennas are up there, and it just has, now these things have lots of amplification to them. So obviously, you're dealing with something a little bit different than the average tower, but still, guys, now it can just go, and like, you guys, you won't see this thing. It's not like you're seeing like the laser go through or anything like that. No, it's completely invisible. But to ask somebody who's been in front of one if they felt it, they'll be like, oh yeah, that burned. So I'm putting this out there just to say that, yeah, I have a lot of expertise. And so I'm trying to stay out of like advocacy for on behalf of certain causes, only because, and it's not because I don't necessarily believe people, it's mostly because most of these movements are tainted by people that are frauds. And I don't like to get involved with them. A lot of the ones, especially that are advocating for people that are victims of it, I'm sorry, those of you who are victims that are legitimate, but you are surrounded by a lot of people that are just completely spinning you, are part of the spin teams, and are really a lot of times only befriending you because they want to be the closest person to the most freshest organs. I hate to break it to you, but that's really what it's about in a lot of these cases. They're just conscious and aware that you're in the sights, you're in the bullseye of one of these things, and they would seek to be the first person to get your organs when you're nice and harvestable. That's one of the reasons why I've reached a point where I don't really engage with a lot of the folks from those communities on a one-to-one basis, because it doesn't really amount to a lot of fruitful, things. And so I'm putting this out there to say that what I would like to do is, because the type of teams, and so sorry, just to be clear there, like Susan, like, you said, what would the objective of your study be and how much dollars and time is needed? Well, that's a little bit difficult to answer, only because it really depends on how far you want to take it. I mean, like what I'm talking about, I think would really require, I would need to have a staff and a team very similar to what I had right before I retired. Like right before I retired, I worked in a group called In-Building System Performance. Okay. I used to be a contractor for Verizon. And, one of our functions was to just study, buildings and take our equipment through them and do these sweeps of what the frequencies that were being transmitted in that building were with a spectrum analyzer, and also testing the various types of signals from the different phones. And so like nowadays, that job must be, wow, the amount of like radiation I would put on my back to do that job today, I can't even imagine. But I used to actually have this backpack and with all these phones mounted in it. And so they would be live all day long. So, I mean, I'm conscious and aware, guys, you can absorb a lot of energy from these things and be okay. I've done it, so I don't know what to tell you there. Am I aware of all the things that could have potentially happened? I don't know. I mean, my back is pretty haggard at this point, so who knows? But I used to strap this backpack though the last couple of years of my job that was designed by this company Qualipoc. It's called the Free Rider 3, and it was basically, those things run over like $30,000, just so you guys understand like the types of levels of like what you need to do the job right. I mean, that's the problem, guys. Like I can tell you how to do it most of the way pretty decent with some basic equipment, but it's not really going to get the job done. I mean, you'd spend 10 times. Here's the it's a matter of what is your time worth. Okay, I can get a cheaper spectrum analyzer that doesn't have all the bells and whistles, that isn't designed by industry professionals for the industry, and I can spend like a week studying frequencies and not be very effective at it because I'm just restricted to like one little like $500 spectrum analyzer, and that kind of thing, and it's some pretty basic like equipment involved that relies heavily upon software that can be manipulated or hacked. Again, it messes with the integrity of the data. And so, anyways, folks, so what I'm saying this for is because a lot of people have made inquiries on that level. And so I'm just telling you, like, if you want to know about that, what we need is like a dedicated team of people, equipment. This would be like oscilloscopes, spectrum analyzers. I mean, that would handle multiple different types of scenarios. You need like companies that were like Rody Schwartz and, like very expensive spectrum analyzers that have tunable antennas that you could point and do sweeps, more focused sweeps. Like actually, like there's ones that are just like the antennas alone sometimes cost thousands of dollars, guys. And right now I'm like dealing with equipment where, I mean, a whole bunch of my equipment sometimes doesn't amount to that. So that, when people ask like, what does it take to do this or that? I think we need at least one team in America, at least one, that how we structure that group. I think there's some groups that are already kind of doing it independently and seem to know what they're talking about, but I just don't know them. I don't know what their ethos and their values are, what side of the fence they're on when it comes to, morals. I mean, you have to have people that are pretty ethical, that could conceive of a lot of different ways to cause a lot of harm, I guess. They are aware of all the different ways, but would not do it themselves. And moreover, would be tasked with locating places where these types of abuses were occurring, and be able to intercede and mitigate, negotiate what can be done to stop it from happening. Right now, if you're looking for it to be the FCC, keep looking. That's the thing, guys. I mean, that's not really what they do. And the problem is right now we're existing in an era where we're not acknowledging openly that frequencies are weaponized. We're not acknowledging that frequencies are used for anything but communication. Everybody's got going, la, 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 la. That's what I get my internet with. Yeah, it doesn't do anything else, does it? It's like, yeah, it does a lot of other things. Like, for example, it can cook your freaking food. You guys understand that nearly the identical frequency you have on your Wi-Fi router is the same one that they bounce around in that little box to cook up your TV dinner. The same signal that you used for your cordless phone in the early days, those old wireless Cobra phones. You remember those in the 80s? Those who were back in using wireless phones in the 80s? Those antennas? Same frequency was being used inside the microwave oven you used to cook your food. So you understand how one thing, when it's placed into a handset, it's a communication device, and then when it's placed inside an oven, it's cooking your food. Now, combine these two concepts and directionalize it. Now you're cooking somebody's head instead of just communicating between a base transmitter and a phone. It's all of them at the same time using the same frequency. That's why this is so challenging. I wasn't going to have this conversation tonight. I was actually actively avoiding it, but oh well, we had it. So if you want to know, all I can tell you is I'm the right guy to ask the right questions. I could definitely spearhead the group. I could definitely be a person that could get the talent together. But I would not even try to approach anyone until somebody came to me with something very, very serious that I could take seriously, because I'm tired of it. Like, I don't, most of the time people come to me and they, and no offense to you, Susan, because I think you have some great feedback, and I'm not, slighting any of your questions or anything else like that. But I'm saying that the vast majority of the time somebody says, like, I know a person that's researching this, or I know a situation where I kind of go, all right. but I almost never can take it seriously when it's all said and done. I no offense to anything like that. Nobody's shown me anything recently. Like if you have, I could just tell you I didn't look at it. If somebody's introduced me to material like that, I'm just simply not reviewing it because it's usually not worth the time, frankly. In my observation, most of the people that are doing this independently still have not figured something out. The people that do this are always one step ahead of you, and they have way more resources than you. And until what the real solution to this, honestly, yeah, you have to find some way to gather, and I get that, and you want to collect things and you want to be able to like prove things. You still have to have at least one good group to do that. You just do. And then you need to get good, valid case studies where the information's verifiable. It's something that can be corroborated and things like that. You can study different locations, and that would have to be a group of people that had a high level of integrity and could be trusted, and moreover would be willing to give a technical presentation of their findings afterwards to the general public, which needs to happen big time. So yeah, I will acknowledge that, folks. There is a degree of psychotronic warfare existing within America. I do think that its source is partially domestic and partially foreign, if that's what you want to hear. And then I think if you can attack it at that level, folks, I think you can understand why, regardless of what we all feel about these things, some of us just have to sort of like put our heads together and work together on something. And again, if you have an ethical hacker position that's available in one of these companies as a contractor or something like that, I'd be happy to join just temporarily at that level, and just to like try to solve some of the issues, especially ones that are repurposing the airwaves of the wireless carriers, because that's where I think a lot of the false attribution winds up going. I'm telling you, this is a guy that just used to work as a wireless design engineer. Like I know things are going on with their spectrum that they would not authorize. Or if it is happening, then I guess we have to find out like why it's happening and who's arranging that. But I'm just telling you, I find very shady things going on with the local experience that I've had with AT&T Wireless's spectrum. It's the aggressiveness of the hacking methods of pinging a person's signal, pinging them with these enterprise servers and things like that to push their signal onto somebody else's device. It's very, very aggressive. And I don't know what's going on with the wireless carriers, if they're giving up or if they're, I don't know, maybe they just don't see it or they don't believe it. Or again, it could just be a sign that some of them are potentially allowing it to happen and pretending that it's not. I hope that's not the case, because I don't think y'all, I mean, if you really kind of understood the things that I've discovered, you like would never want somebody using your company to do the kind of things that these people are using your airwaves for. And so just again, I'm going to end this portion of this because I need to get back to the core topic. But they do use some form, I think, of Cobham intercept, like a modernized form of a Cobham intercept, I think, to just hack into people's phones. So again, I could make myself available to help troubleshoot that issue with other folks. So sorry, guys, I did not mean to go way off topic there. That went for like over 10 minutes, and I apologize. Getting back to the topic at hand. Okay. So when I was basically visiting a lot of these geographic locations, okay, Kaiser Steel in particular was the one that for me really kind of highlighted to me like what's going on here. Kaiser, basically, the way that Kaiser Steel got founded was it was for like World War II. Henry J. Kaiser developed this steel plant to help with the war effort. They made a whole bunch of pro steel and pro America type films and things like that. And I think that Kaiser Steel was a part of that. They made one that I just discovered recently in my search for various things that were Kaiser Steel related. A movie called Steel-Town that was directed by a guy named Charles P Boyle. And that's when the whole thing really was like, all right, now I know I'm not imagining this. There's something that's going on here. How this happened, I don't know. And the origins of why this name would be what it is if it's not a real name, I don't get it. So the best thing I can tell you is if you looked at the slide that this whole presentation started with, I never did finish this Demon House clip, did I? All right. Yeah, I think it's important to finish this, guys. Sorry, I went off topic, so I'm going to get back to this really quick. So again, I was talking about the Mary Hill Stonehenge being at 33 degrees and like why our perception of numbers and having the number introduced to us in repetition over and over again in tandem with focus concentration exercises that would have been done at these locations like Freemason lodges, knowing that the number 33 is important to Masons. Okay, so they do a lot of energy work surrounding the number 33. They're going to focus and concentrate on number 33 the same way that a Christian focuses on a Christian cross when they're in a church oftentimes, right? That's a symbol you focus and concentrate on. And then as you and your congregation are all together in that church, the Christ symbol is having resonance added to it as a symbol, which adds power and energy to the influence of Christianity globally. It is going into the earth because all of you are have emissions of bioplasma. And so what you focus and concentrate on together in that room through the focused prayers, meditations, the Christian cross, all of that feeds into the collective consciousness and adds power and vibratory frequency to it, which I would argue, guys, you know, whatever you think of me and my belief systems, but if you're a Christian, then you must understand that what I'm telling you is not some sort of Satanly concept. I'm trying to help you understand why it would be important now more than ever, if you believe in your faith, for you to just rigidly like practice that, pray. See, I'm encouraging that. And I think a person that would have wouldn't have your better interests at heart would not do that. I think it's especially important to do it in the West because I think it's been a foundation of what's kind of made us strong and able to sort of like stay grounded in I think a world where, because other cultures hold a more esoteric belief system when it comes to energy, I think what we're starting to see, guys, as we start to see our own values being chipped away at here. And I'm not going to suggest that Christianity is the only one. I mean, there's lots of different religions here, guys. It's just that it is kind of a fundamental aspect of the belief structure here and in the West. And as you see it get kind of, you know, chipped away at, other things gain more influence, and that would include, frankly, black magic. That would include, quite frankly, witchcraft. That would include OTO sex magic. That would include, you know, things more consistent with cult belief systems, things more consistent with the more upper echelons of the secret societies, because they themselves, okay, once they have access to the collective consciousness, those people with those types of values know how to make the rest of us question ourselves, question each other, question what grounds us in our daily reality, the values that ground us in our daily reality that help us stay in a civil world where we understand that no, it's wrong to kill. It's wrong to do these, you know, like the Bible has some pretty good basics about things that are wrong, guys, regardless of what you want to think. And so when that gets chipped away at excessively, like we've seen being done the last couple years, especially, guys, I mean, this isn't me just saying like, I'm scared of this new reality. No, guys, this is like brute force psychotronic warfare and structuring our reality in ways that they know will deform our society. It forms what's called a destructured mass. It's tearing us apart as a society. It's creating, quite frankly, a lot of the gender flips. They're artificially priming it, and they're getting people at a like who are already like, think about it, guys. They're putting these little kids in these schools who have no ability how to articulate what might be going on to them psychotronically. So those of you who are experiencing things like that, you can articulate it. Can a 5-year-old? Can a 5-year-old go like, I don't know. It seems like something's sort of magnetically resonating my pineal gland, and it's making it hard for me to concentrate on the letter A. I just can't spell it right now. No, you're going to think the kid has a learning disability, and he may be experiencing, or she may be experiencing, a psychotronic weapon that's vibrating their poor little skulls out of resonance. So, why do you think somebody would do that? Why do you think they would not only introduce those types of methods into their environment, but then in tandem start telling them things like, well, do you know what your cisgender is? Do you know that, you may not be a man or a woman? Maybe you should be seeking out relationships with older people. Whoa. Have you seen that crap they've been doing lately? They're literally putting this into these kids' heads. That is a attack on the next generation. Whoever is structuring this with these groups, guys. Yes, it's domestic in part, but it has foreign assistance. It has foreign money. And I believe the technology hacks that I've uncovered here that I need help working on with a serious group. That's why I'm going to forget any other issues that we have if we work on this one problem, guys. We can work on the one thing. And then you can tell me to go F off after that. But like, I really think we should work on it. They're able to sort of hack our infrastructure in ways that can both take money from people using these sort of intercepts that can repurpose the unused spectrum that carriers have access to and turn them into private networks that the person is unaware is in a private network. And they can just basically kind of do whatever they want to through time lag and time delay. And again, I would really need to have a more broad technical discussion with more, people that are closer to the industry to really explain the rest. And I've tried to here in a more basic way, but like, if you really want me to do the deep dive, I need to sit down with somebody someplace at some point. And I don't know how to really make that a reality without causing people problems at certain times. So that's why I hope that that we're getting closer to, guys, is like finding a way to like take this more seriously, because this method here, guys, what I'm telling you is that if you can understand what I'm telling you is like, okay, the ELF thing. So Zach Bagans is inside the demon house. He experiences a extremely low frequency signal that starts to tap his pineal gland aggressively and make him go like, man, I don't feel good. Well, what is not making him feel good? It's this pulsing feeling that's going through, it's rippling through his body, because got news for you guys. ELF goes through everything. It passes through water. It passes through everything, and it travels all the way around the world. Like, they can transmit out an ELF wave. A Russian transmitter, I think they said, they transmitted like some extremely low frequency thing that took like a year to travel all the way around before it like dissipated or something like that, because it just recirculates. I don't even know if I'm understanding that correctly, because it just seems like a strange concept unless you kind of go like, oh, I guess that makes sense. If you think about it, every single thought that you have is programming this biofield, this plasma field that we're all existing in. And that's the color spectrum. Everything that you see around you, it's a shared agreement on what we're doing with the plasma field that's brought into physical reality through vibratory frequencies, shared language, numbers, number association relative to patterns, colors, all things that are just very sophisticated forms of training that we've achieved over the centuries of just constant reinforcement of one another and programming each other's biofields. So the frequencies matter. The frequencies matter when they're in the extremely low frequency range, because they pass through everything, including Faraday cages. You can't have a Faraday room that extremely low frequency doesn't pass through. I don't think they've developed that yet. I think it passes through everything. I might be wrong on that, guys. If you know of a Faraday situation, have they developed a Faraday cage that could actually defeat an extremely low frequency? I don't think that. I think it just gets through everything. But see, if the brain produces extremely low frequency, and extremely low frequency can pass through everything, then I should tell you pretty much all you need to know right there. And it should also tell you why they would go through aggressive efforts to change the frequency of our pineal glands, and then using some pretty sophisticated, like, honestly, The only way to describe it is black magic, voodoo. But it's numbers association relative to ritual practice that they've just simply integrated into technology. So it is changing people's physical reality. It's changing people's idea of, gee, am I a man or a woman? Is it okay for my 2-year-old to suddenly say that they're not the gender that they are? I guess so. No, it's really not. Sorry, I'm not trying to mock you. I'm telling you that, like, those of you who aren't actively engaged in helping push this along as an agenda, those of you who may be just experiencing it, you need to look a little bit deeper into what's happening to you, because someone is literally making your mind flip 180 from reality. They are changing the hemispheres of the way your brain is supposed to operate. And it's not your fault. And I think once this collective, awakening of some sort happens and people start to understand what's happened to them, I think you're going to learn that quite a bit of what's gone on, I don't know, it's aggressive. Um, but yeah, sorry guys. Getting back to it, yeah, I need a group that can study these types of things. Somebody that and here's the thing, guys. I think that we can, if you really want this to be something where we can make it self-funding. I think by turning it into entertainment. That's, I think, is honestly the solution, because it provides. Here's the deal: the equipment's expensive as hell, so you have to have a business model that's sustainable, and I can't just do that through private donations. I don't know anybody that's that rich, okay? And nor would I want to ask anybody if I thought that they were, just because I just think that that's not the way to do it. I know this is compelling. I think that what we really should be doing is this study that does happen, we need to structure it into something that's entertaining, into a group of people that would have the same type of, like, whatever. If you like ghost adventures, why the hell would you not want this to happen? This is like the nature of what we all exist in. This is combining the best of, like, Ancient Aliens with anything that those paranormal shows have times 10. I mean, it's way better. I don't even know why I would have to sell this, except that here's the problem within the media. Now you're getting down to who's doing it. You're asking the wizards and the warlocks and the witches, can I reveal your secrets using your own stations? And they're going to go, hell no. So the ones that would like to just solve this problem now, that kind of see, like, okay, fine, the jig is up. We can't keep acting like this isn't happening, right? Those of you who are inclined at all to think that, please follow through on that idea. It has to end at some point. You can't keep just structuring people's reality for them. You can't keep trying to pretend that everybody's just going to believe it. And now is the time where you just have to be part of fixing the problem, and not in that kind of phony, just sort of backing out after you've only effed up really inconceivably kind of way. Like we know that there's happening within the mainstream media cycle right now. Like, guys, maybe this COVID thing isn't the best thing in the world. Oh, you don't think? Oh, really? Seriously? You didn't know? No, you've been structuring this reality for us in tandem with all the wizards and the warlocks and the witches. Don't tell me suddenly that you've had an epiphany. No, you were behind doing this the whole time. And those who weren't, like, you just pussed out. You just accepted, like, well, I can't change it, so I'm just not going to argue. Okay, fine. But, whatever. Look how far behind our country is because a whole bunch of people wouldn't question the common narrative. Look how far behind our country is. Look how much damage has been done because people just accept things. Well, all I'm telling you guys is, like, that's not entirely your fault. But once you get past it, it's not entirely your fault. Then just make it to where it's just easier to look. People got to do what they got to do. Okay. But just, it should make it to where it's easier within your own mind to just sort of forgive. That's all. Forgive yourself, forgive one another, understand that, like, there's something way, way deeper going on, especially the last couple of years. And it's so far beyond COVID stress and the isolation and everything else like that. It's psychotronic in nature. It was designed to keep you in a box and change the nature of your reality. And it kind of worked in a way. But here's the thing. It was done so artificially, and it was done with digital modulation, because that's what all these things are. You're an analog waveform. Your brain is analog emissions. And so what this system has been doing the last couple years is aggressively trying to pattern your reality by aggressively hitting your pineal glands while you've been in isolation, telling, like, those of you who experience it really bad and really feel it, then suddenly they go like, oh, it's a COVID symptom. It's not. No, it's electricity. You're surrounded by an aggressive electrical field that can be weaponized on you. And then it can make you sick. And then somebody can say that you got this or that. But if your skin was twitching when this was happening, if you're getting like a lot of muscle spasms and twitches, you're just getting aggressively tased in a very low form of it. It's an anti-life signal. It's just training your body just to die and wither. That's what it was. Convincing everybody that they had to accept the cage, accept the prison, and then it began to restructure all of our reality. But it didn't work. You're all pushing back. I love seeing what's happening right now. Quite honestly, I've been very encouraged by the pushback that's going on right now. I think it's brilliant. It's amazing. It's happening all over the world. And it's really like, despite what we've been through the last couple of years, like, I'm really like, to me, this really gives me a lot of faith in the human spirit to push through all this nonsense. It makes me feel like no matter what kind of technology evolution that they invent, that us as the collective consciousness, we're always going to find a way to defeat it just through sheer brainwave. Because that's what we bring. We bring everything into physical manifestation through shared brainwave. bending the plasma field. And if you don't believe that, test it out yourself the way that I did. I went to this Stonehenge. I physically went to that Stonehenge and I've tested it out. Everything synchronizes. Information synchronizes. You have to experience it yourself. I wish I could, you know what? I talked about doing this. Sometime what I want to do is like develop a tour where I take people to these locations so they can actually experience it. The only problem is I had the idea during COVID and that was nearly impossible. But I think now that a lot of these restrictions are getting lifted, we could actually do this now. But this was an idea that I had where we can visit some of these occulted Hollywood locations and I can actually show people that there's something going on with the energy fields there, that we can actually take measurements in the soil with like the helionosis life meter. I can show you, I can kind of like, what I'd almost like to do is, if I can get the equipment together, maybe this is the answer, Susan, in the interim, trying to get into entertainment, is to make something a little bit kind of like what Zach Bagans and Ghost Adventures does with their things, but I don't want it to be as I respect that people have different methods, but to me, you don't troll energies. Like, even if you're just trying to get results, it's not a good way to go about doing it. Yet, look, you know, again, trolling is a very good method of getting things to sort of like come out from where they're hiding. I know that from personal experience. It's something that I use to get hackers to self-identify. Excuse me. Like a lot of people, they have to leave a calling card because it's just in their ego. That's kind of one of the things that I've kind of learned to do, is like, when I suspect that somebody's kind of doing something that they shouldn't do, I do something in a way that they shouldn't be able to access. Like, technically, this isn't even like a data set that the person would ever be able to view or look at. And I'll play something there that I know that the person will get like super pissed off if they see or read or whatever. Not because it's sincere or has any sort of basis in reality or anything else like that. It's simply because I want to know, based on their reaction at another point in time, if they actually were accessing the data set that I placed there. I'll give you an example. I learned that somebody was like tapping me at an office that I worked in, and it was a telecommunications office. So these were people that literally could just tap. They just knew how to just illegally listen to your conversation because it's in the tools of being an engineer within that department. They were in the switch. That's the main switching office where the calls are processed. Many years ago, a long time ago, guys, like almost close to 20 years ago. The point was, as though one of the ways that like I suspected this guy was doing it just because I'll give you like it started this way. I would be talking to my girlfriend at the time on the phone, and we would make plans or something like that, you know. And so maybe there was a work project or something like that, and I came in on like the next day after having a conversation the night before I come into work, and I'll say some I'll say something like going, well, hey, if you want me to work on that database this weekend, you know, let me know. I could probably make some time. And he's like, oh, wait a second, you're not going someplace with your girlfriend? And like I'd only talked about that with her the night before, kind of thing. And this guy that shouldn't have been able to listen to my conversation, I didn't talk about any going anywhere with the person or whatever like that. So things like that, where I was kind of like, well, maybe he was just inquiring because you know he figured that we would be doing something. That's okay, you know. So you start to write it off, and then over and over again, the guy would like say something where you're like, are you? I'm pretty sure you've been listening to my conversations, dude. Are you one of those like Pete freak people? You know, likes to listen. And it turned out, I think that's kind of what it was. The guy just had like a habit for listening. He wanted to do it. He just, you know, kind of his thing. And so you know, again, I honestly, when I talked to the guy day to day, I really didn't dislike him. I mean, I got along with him for the most part. We had some disagreements on some like philosophical things, but you know, I could get along with him. So I made a point in my conversation with my girlfriend once I discovered he was doing this to like say some very pointed and mean things about him in the conversation that were not really sincere. I just did it because I wanted him to be like, I wanted to see if he was listening to see like the next day. It's like a water marker, you know, like you put something like it's just a way to feel like, did they hear it? Did they listen or something like that? And I come in and you know, and then their dispositions completely changed. And I'm like, man, I think he actually listened. But again, I didn't actually think that of the guy. I just wanted to know if he was listening. And he took the bait. And so that's the ways that I get them to sort of like kind of draw out and kind of reveal what they do. And then, you know, psychologically using some just basics, you know, of ego. And then from there, I began to develop stronger cases for proving, like, you know, catching the person in the act and things like that. And we actually got a case put together and proved it. And the person had finally had to admit that they had been doing it. And, you know, and we got our justice. We finally proved it. But again, the burden leading up to that was challenging. And I promise you, what made it happen was the psychological component and me trolling the person to some degree in ways that again because I was aware of that they were kind of illegally or secretly tapping something that they shouldn't have. I just exploited that to drop information in a place where again if they shouldn't have been there or if they hadn't been there where they shouldn't have been, they wouldn't have even heard this. And it wasn't sincere. To this day, I would want that person to know that none of I just said some things like, you know, things that would like, I don't know, like, if you know a person's like really sensitive about like their clothes or something like that, you know, it'd be like you just sit there and like go on some tirade about like, yeah, you know, so and so wore a shirt. It was really stupid looking, man. It made them look like they were, I don't know, a little bit, you know, I don't know, something like that, right? Something that you know would like make the person like really insecure later on or respond in a way where they would look at you differently. And guys, I'm sorry that I think of things like this to do, but it's just the reality. To me, these are like peaceful ways of using psychology to sort of get things to rise to the surface a little bit. But I discuss it openly. I think the problem was in that particular case, I didn't understand that the issue was a lot more complex than I, first realized that there may have been reasons for the intercepts to occur that maybe I hadn't become aware of and things like that. So, hey, touche. So again, sometimes those issues are even more complicated. There's another layer that you have to peel on the onion before you even realize that, maybe you didn't have that entirely right either. But it doesn't change the fact that the person did kind of like listen in when they shouldn't have and was a little bit of a peep freak. So that's all I'm saying. It's a listening freak, I should say. I shouldn't say peep because it's a different concept. Anyways. Tales from the wireless industry. You guys know that happens. Come on. Probably not so much now because things are way more, tightly controlled and everything like that. I don't think there's quite as many freedoms and everything like that because of the way things are logged into and accesses of passwords and things like that. So, anyways, I keep going off topic, guys. Keep going off topic. It's going to be another one of those like way long ones.
So I just think this help people, understand why mystic societies, people like the Freemasons, study these things. There's something to it. We can all kind of roll our eyes at it, but sometimes when you can assign numbers to it and it's very specific and it's consistent, you can do it over and over again. Like this, see, this Mason Lodge lines up perfectly with the farm we had, my schools, my elementary school, my junior high and high school there. So anyways, you follow that line 90 degrees over, right? I don't know if it's exactly 90, right? So it's kind of has the whatever. You have to draw the heading, then just keep running it as long for whatever. But you notice it lines up with the demon house perfectly. Well, not quite perfectly, but it's like nearly right on it within blocks. I mean, like you could walk to it from where the line is. It's pretty amazing, huh? So yeah, this is things like that, if you start working with ley line, grid energy, map energy, start studying things involving Freemasons. And I'm not a Freemason, by the way. I've never joined her, and I've never been recruited or anything like that. I just studied some of the things involving angles and azimuth and angles and azimuths, things like that. But yeah, check this out. This is where you get to at the Demon House, and you can look at this in Google Earth and kind of zoom in on it. And this is the way I do a lot of my kind of esoteric map work. I guess you could say my research. It's not really work. It's just research that I do. And I follow these types of lines, and it's all, it's difficult to explain, but there's almost always real data correlations to it. So all I try to do is say, okay, I notice that somebody on this energy line that I know to be relevant for energetics, he has experienced, these very low ELF ranges, and a lot of people claim that they experience quote unquote possessions. So I think that, especially on Halloween here, I think what this kind of demonstrates to us is that there is really a scientific bridge that we can cross here between the paranormal, some of these radio frequency principles and, things involving mystic societies like the Freemasons. There's something these people knew and studied as science, as what it was before, we were taught a lot of false sciences. So I think people just really need to open their minds up a little bit more to these things. And, if anybody wants to join me in that, I'm trying to just research these types of things and have some fun, but also get some answers to these things because I believe people. I've seen it. I think that you can have things where people can experience possessions, and there can be many reasons for it. And it's not always because of something that's faith-based or religion. It can have entirely to do with energy that's on a ley line or grid energy line. And if you start studying these things more intrinsically, you'll understand there's a real science to it, and it's nothing to be mocked or made fun of. So I just wanted to throw that out there for everybody on Halloween, and have a good time out there. Try not to try not to hurt each other. Bye.
Yeah, that one. I did that a while ago on Halloween, like a few years ago. Kind of just like as a theme thing that day, just to get people thinking more about like, how do buildings actually affect behavior and things like that. Yeah, there you go. So you say the pharaohs started all the secret societies, Michael. So, when you think about that, what were the pyramids? What were they really doing? I would argue that the whole function, at least in parts of what they were doing, they were amplifiers of bioenergy, and they were programmers of the plasma field. They were bending physical reality. And so if you believe, as I do, that space and time are really just agreements or shared agreements, they're also things that bend the plasma field. They're more representations of the way the plasma manifests within our daily reality, involving electrical fields and magnetic fields as representations of time and space. And then taking it from that angle, I think that what we're dealing with here, like why would they make like The Running Man? Why would they make RoboCop? Why would they make Elm Street 2? Why would all these movies that have these sort of themes of apocalyptic futures of a society, especially The Running Man being filmed at Kaiser Steel, guys? Like if you were to really look into this, I'm going to show you some reasons why this is very compelling for me personally. Like, guys, like if you think about it, you must know there's a whole bunch of these groups that just don't even like they don't even believe that like in the death cycle. They believe that people like reincarnate and things like that. So if you get it from that angle, you know, what were the pyramids? What were they really doing? What was their function? I think the kings of the queen's chambers were designed basically to take whatever it was that the two people were focused and concentrated on within that chamber. They did focus concentration exercises, and then it integrates the energy field from the earth and passes it through the selected royals that are placed within inside the kings and queens chambers. And then their resonant frequencies, the ohm of their voice, the ohm signal, the brain waves, it basically is a way to integrate these two, the male, female, the Ka and the Ba energies, into the earth energy, and then re-radiate it in a way that gives them influence as the royal family. And I think what they've discovered is that because space and time don't exist, that it's those original groups and bloodlines that did that seem to maintain to this very day some degree of the influence, because we exist in sort of an ionospheric chamber where everything that they programmed within this plasma field and that anchored into the earth and into the crystalline structure and in all the quartz and everything like that is still communicating this base information that it perceives as the quote, the origins of time, as the original bloodlines and the original people. And so you don't really lose the influence. It doesn't go away. To some degree, folks, I mean, like, I think I've experienced a little of this myself in ways that I just wasn't even conscious and aware of. I have things that go on with me where I synchronize with information where I go, like, I don't know, maybe that's what the reason why it happens. Maybe it's because I'm tapped into some of those groups at the DNA level. I think I'm to the point now, folks, where like at an intuitive level, I'm pretty sure that's what it is, but gaining the proof would be difficult just based on the way that everything's been covered up. All right. And so that's why, okay, so one of the things I'm going to show you here is the article that I did in person from Fontana. And so the reason why I'm going to show you something here, it's from Twitter real quick, actually. All right. So again, I just did a quick search on Fontana for my Twitter profile, but again, in the movie Vegas Vacation, the associate producer was Fred Fontana. There's a 44.66 degree line that goes from Fontana to Las Vegas. That's inside the infrastructure. It's Fontana Avenue. It goes 44.66. And it's weird because that road that you see at the end credits, that's the road. I mean, it kind of follows that highway between Southern California out to Las Vegas, Nevada. And again, this taps into all the information that you've probably seen me do in my energetics material here. So I said, you've heard of Prim, right? It sounds like you put pair and rim, like Research in Motion Blackberry, together to form the word pair rim. It's where the great big solar array is, along with Buffalo Bill Casino. Did I mention the Fontana Avenue 44 degree line goes through there? So this is where, guys, I guess my information is kind of esoteric. So how do I explain this to people? Because if I try to tell you what I think is going on, it makes a lot of people roll their eyes. But what effectively you have out there is this huge solar array panel that functions way different than the average one. It has these mirrors that all bring in the sun, and they're designed to focus in on that one thing in the center in a really like aggressive way. Like it's not like a whole bunch of solar panels all individually collecting and feeding into a grid. They like bounce the sun onto that one post in the center, and it's this huge energy beam, I guess you could say, of a bunch of other individually focused energy beams going to the one. That's the one in the left corner down here. Okay, and that's one's on the state line border. That's just an aerial shot of it. But it's really interesting if you look here on the top right, and this is in my energetics material, you'll kind of notice here that they actually position these 3 solar arrays to look from the sky a lot like you're looking down on the Giza pyramids. It's like they were literally trying to almost create a mirror of the Giza pyramids, but it's almost like this concept they did out at Prim is an inversion of what the original thing was, which I think that the original concept was more, yeah, I mean, obviously the people that were in the kings and queens chambers were giving themselves some extra influence. Otherwise, you know, somebody had to be in there, right? And it's obviously going to go to them, but it's their duty, I guess you could say, it's their role as part of this quote kingdom to actually represent the interests of the entire society and to help help amplify the reality for the collective, you know, in a way that would take into consideration their interests and not just that of the royal bloodline. And this is where they get corrupted. The energy, and this is where I think you're going to find that Valery Uvarov's material is really fascinating, because he gets into this whole concept of the mechanics of negative energy and why it's not a good idea for many people to go visit the pyramids in Egypt. There is a lot of negative energy that's contained within these places because of what went wrong there. Now, when things are going right, when somebody's practicing these things in a way that's positive and productive and not self-serving, it can have an enormous benefit on the collective consciousness and society. But of course, you'd have to have a much better idea on what you agree upon, because again, what you're doing with these things is you're amplifying your perceived reality and what you would like to see as the collective consciousness reality. Using these pyramidal structures, you're literally putting it into the collective hive mind that's going to re-radiate and find its way into the entire ionosphere, where it recirculates constantly and it won't stop. And I'm telling you, the cultures that understand this, like Russia, for example, does understand this very well. They will ultimately benefit from what they're doing. The cultures that have discovered their pyramids and have actually like Bosnia and the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun, the Bosnian Pyramid of the Moon, all the different ones that are out there, especially the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun, which does have these healing energies. It's measurable, it's provable. You can take the helionosis meter in there and find an amplification of the energies. They've taken the BioWell GDV camera in there and found amplified energies. People have all discussed feeling healed when they go into these places. So I want you to think about the potentials for healing, for creating tourist attractions, for example, that would involve healing mechanisms and things where people would understand the function of the pyramid, why it works, and how it works in a way that is, you know, more responsible and not just like, cool, it's a pyramid and I hear freaky things go on there. Because that's kind of the way it's being handled, I think, on some level. By some within, well, look, I don't want to like be too critical of the way like Egyptology is. I mean, I'm fascinated by the study of that too, but it's not the only pyramidal structure that's relevant. There's global pyramidal structures. They're in China, they're in Russia, they're in everywhere. Seriously, and in great concentrations, and a lot of them are unrecognized because there's just simply to be one culture that seems to be dominant when it comes to these types of pyramids. Like they're the only ones that get really recognized. But I mean, beyond that, you know, there's the Mexican ones, yeah. But again, the Mexican ones, if you study Uvarov's research, also have the same problem. Lots of negative energy anchored physically to the location. Some people report feeling negative after they visit it. They feel the negative sensations. They want to leave the area soon. And it would be good of you, if you do feel that way oftentimes, to leave the area, because it may not be the best energy for you to be experiencing at that time. People do get sick and they get permanent illnesses from these places oftentimes. I mean, that's something that's reported in some of these locations. Again, guys, there's something about that whole area involving Fontana that's very, very relevant. Oh, sorry, guys, hang on. All right. Yeah. So done lots and lots of research. I've physically placed my feet on the ground in these areas, okay, where that energy system is. And so what I'm trying to explain to you is that 44.66 degree line that goes between Fontana and Las Vegas originates right next to Kaiser Steel. So I don't believe that the filming of all these movies like um, you know, the Elm Street Part 2, like RoboCop, like Running Man. I mean, and Terminator 2 especially, these are some pretty significant films. And to have their energy and the actors' energies anchored to Kaiser Steel, almost like as an anchor point to the arrow that goes between Fontana at 44.66 degrees out towards that energy system where, again, there's all those Giza pyramid looking things. There's a tunnel underneath. You have energy that could be flowing between Southern California and Las Vegas, as well as a communication pathway. Because anytime you have a private tunnel, you're going to have private communications within the tunnel. My guess is, because of the uranium pockets out there, which are vast and numerous, there's tons and tons of uranium mining. And let us also not forget, you're not that far away from Yucca Mountain Repository, which is a deep, 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 deep underground nuclear storage facility that is now defunct because, well, nobody wants their nuclear waste stored anywhere. So I guess, I don't know, they just want to keep making it, but they don't have another game plan for where they want to put it and how to get it there. That became the big problem with that. So lots of topics tonight, guys. Sorry, it's getting all over the place. But yeah, so obviously this whole Kaiser thing is a big part of this sort of Hollywood mafia, the word Kaiser and its relevance to everything to do with this energy system. And my gut's telling me, guys, is that really what I've tapped into here is that I'm gonna put it delicately as I can because I can't really say it outright, guys. But obviously, somebody close to me is aware of an energy system that exists between Fontana to Las Vegas at a minimum. I believe it goes further than that into Nevada and into Arizona to some degree, because there's a lot of the dumbs in Arizona, tons and tons of deep underground military bases. And that's what you're going to find is, I think, the common thread here is they just drill, go underground, connect all these different things. They have their little Shangri-Las set up, their private homes, their apartments to escape to, their breeding programs that they're going to escape to. Well, they've created hell on earth for the rest of us because they don't have to live in it. At the end of the day, they have a game plan that they can go to, and it's underground, or it's on an island someplace where they basically have chased everybody else away from, but they're going to enjoy the fruits of their labors or lack thereof. The fruits of all of our labors. How about that? Well, I don't think they're actually going to get to enjoy it the way they wanted to, but hey. And so I put here the Corleone's compound was filmed at the Kaiser estate. So anybody who's seen The Godfather Part 2, literally there's a scene where Fredo gets shot, in the boat. Sorry, spoilers, guys. You must know Fredo got shot by now. if you didn't know Fredo eventually dies inside one of these movies, you're not paying attention to anything going on in politics, let alone that movie. But yeah, anyways, that's where he gets shot, is there. And it's in that thing. And so all I'm telling you guys is that anytime they do things like show where the Corleones are within the film, it's a mirror of the real mob and the real mafia, and some of its origins are back in Fontana, and some of that connects to Kaiser Steel, and some of that connects to Hollywood and the secret infrastructure within Hollywood that's really been behind two economies, primarily uranium and television and film. And the unison of these things occurred during the war effort, same time as Henry J. Kaiser was making steel for the war. You had this group of people within America that were merging the ecosystems of Hollywood into the uranium economy and plutonium economies, because we needed secret ways of passing information out in the open, like a email, because email did not exist yet. There was no way just to electronically go, I mean, there was and there wasn't. Not a way to always securely do it. If you wanted to keep a secret out in the open, cartoons, film reels, television series, radio shows, and that's how they did it. Okay, for a very long time. That was a big part of their communication system. And it's been repurposed and reused also as well by criminal elements who are doing things like drug trafficking, human trafficking, and also gray market economies of uranium, as well as, weapons trading and things of that nature, drug trading, all the usual suspects of crimes, right? And so I put here that Godfather Part 2, 1 and 2, this was known as the Kaiser estate when that movie was filmed. And then guys, you're just going to see them using the same street names that the real mafia was close to back in Fontana. So again, there next to the Kaiser estate was the Cherry Avenue, there was the Interlochen, there was the same words that you're going to find near nearly all the things that they're connected to. There's a common set of words that'll always be near the same families and the same bloodlines in repetition. Kaiser Steel, Kaiser Soze, Kaiser Permanente, Corleone, Ozkin. So again, Corleone family has the word Leone. Core would be like the earth core, like a tunnel. You're coring, you're boring. Boring is like coring, okay? Coring the earth. Corleone, Ozkin. I think if my research is correct, basically this guy Leon Ozkin, who basically made everybody kind of think he was sort of like, just General Burkhalter on Hogan's Heroes, a Nazi general that held Hogan and his team, captive in Germany on the series Hogan's Heroes. It's way deeper than that. He was a technology evolution guy. He was a camera guy. He was involved with cinematography, the films at that level. And this was not just any camera system. This was a system that physically alters a person's appearance. So Leon Ozkin himself was a modification of the real person. He himself was, again, he does look like that in real life. He looks a lot like that, actually. The real guy, Leon Ozkin, with slight makeup and prosthetic modifications, could effectively, in real life, pass for his camera self. It was possible, okay? But with the cameras, he can go from having eyes that are, like if his eyes are a little bit more narrow, they can make them more like this. If his face is, more like this, they can make it more like this. Make his cheeks go up like this. They can make his nose more exaggerated. And this is all done back in the 50s and the 40s and the 60s and 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Well, I think it was around the 70s is when modern CGI was sort of computer generated modification, imagery modification was being integrated into this technology. But prior to then, yeah, they could literally take a person's image and just use optic bend and some prosthetics and make a person who could appear in daily life one way look a completely different way on camera, and then everybody in the general population would be none the wiser. You would only see these people in movies, television, and on the Oscars or the Emmys or something like that from time to time, or a game show. But these are all controlled environments. They're all pretty contained back in the old school days. And so those who aren't in on the secret of who the real people are behind the fictional persona actors, they would be none the wiser. You would grow up thinking that all of these actors and actresses that you liked were all real people, when in all actuality, some of them were actually a few different people, or they were a shared persona, or a brother, rather, two brothers and a cousin shared one person's likeness because they all could pass for that person with the right amount of makeup and prosthetics in real life. And so this is relevant, guys, because you're going to want to pay attention to this thread. In fact, maybe I'll just give you this link so you can review it on your own. I'm going to put it in the chat here. I don't know if that'll work for you or not, but that's, that's basically how I found it. I just did a search for Fontana, the town that I did all my research in, and then my profile name on Twitter. And then you can go through and see all these slides yourself and kind of look at the way I've highlighted things. But, when it's close to your own family, the ciphers and the codes are close to your own family. You kind of know what the names mean. You know where the locations are. it's hard to ignore it, and then it's hard not to say something externally. Why did this happen? Why was this secret kept? Who knew about it? That's why I put Godfather's not just a movie, it's all there. The ciphers are the Fontana Kaiser connection. Kaiser owned the estate where Fredo was killed and Godfather 2 was filmed. Puppet producers hide the real ones. It's always been the way in the land of Oz. They created for us. See, guys, what I'm telling you is there's a fiction behind these fictions. You have already accepted that the story that you're going to see when you go to watch that movie is fiction. The part that I think is less accepted is that some of the people that are listed as the producer, that's the other alternate reality. That's the other fiction that we accept, though, that we're all tricked into believing is real. We believe that Albert S. Ruddy authentically rose and ascended to become the producer that he did and looks the way that he does authentically. And again, a guy will appear to a podium and say, "Hi, everybody. I was born Albert S. Ruddy. I'm accepting this award for producing The Godfather." And all I'm telling you is that's as much of an act as Sonny and Michael and all the other characters inside The Godfather arguing back and forth with Don Corleone and Marlon Brando and Al Pacino and all the rest of them. But the difference is, you know that that's a script, but the people making it are just as much of a scripted reality. And then when you see some of the things that especially Albert S. Ruddy and his wife Francois Ruddy were involved in, like the Rajneeshi incident in Oregon, that's basically them taking all of their skills as movie producers and transitioning a scripted reality into our physical reality. They made something up and everybody believed it, and they took over an entire county in rural Oregon politically with a fiction that was part real, part fiction, part live action role play that turned into reality. Their film became so believable to people, they got people to fear the Rajneeshi who were part of that community, and they got a whole bunch of people who were looking for something free and just wanted a place to live to move in with the Rajneeshi. Most of them were homeless. Many of them had criminal histories. And they all flooded this rural Oregon county with Francois Ruddy, who changed her name to Ma Prem Haja and joined the Rajneeshis. But who joined who? How did that really happen? Should we believe that story? No. The Rajneeshi incident was taking something that does exist, the real belief system called, I believe, Osho, is what somebody told me. And that's part of the material that you'll find on whatever, but it's now called Osho International. But the thing is within the concepts of these belief systems, within like Eastern mysticism especially, are real tangible and tangible concepts that would teach Western cultures about how we perceive physical reality. And I would argue that they need to be listened to more. I think that Indian culture has a lot going on with it as far as how they communicate biofields. It's at a level of sophistication that's very similar to the Chinese with their sort of body maps involving acupuncture. I would say the Indian culture in India, they have a lot of this information relative to bioenergy fields and frequency fields within the human body. So it doesn't surprise me that people in Hollywood would co-opt that and then make everybody scared of somebody who promoted the ideology, while they proceed to take over this town in rural Oregon from all of these people who are probably mostly, if they're not Christians, they're just like, leave me alone, end of the roaders, you know, guns and glory kind of people. But yeah, that's what's in Oregon out there mostly. Good, nice people, you know, go to church or whatever, or at a bare minimum, they just want to be left alone and kind of live their nice, quiet life out there. And so they kind of came out there and really just decided to like flex nuts and show what they could do, bringing all of their Hollywood resources and a lot of Eastern mysticism to basically perform a lot of different things simultaneously, and it effectively scared a lot of people to a population of people that they should, be forming good relationships with. I think. I mean, there's a lot we can learn from the cultures from India. I worked with a whole lot of people from India, Pakistan, and some other parts, especially on a contract that I had back in 2012 when I was in the Bay Area. I mean, almost my entire office was guys that were from India in various regions, and they had such diverse sets of opinions from one another that I'd never experienced such a diverse group of guys from India. Yes, you know what I'm saying? Like, sure, I'd have been in offices with guys that were, like one or two guys were from India, but never was I in like in an office where nearly like I was the one person that was probably the exception. Like, again, oftentimes I was in an offices where I was the most ethnic guy in the group, believe it or not. I would be their check mark, like, we got that 10% quota down there. Okay, good. We got Gabe. But no, I mean, was I a person that would introduce people to a lot of different things involving my culture? Probably not. I was probably about as immersed in being in the American culture as any of them were on some level. Just, I obviously have my own unique perspectives, but whatever. Okay. Point is, I'm from, Washington, Oregon area, to know that once I discovered who the real Godfather family was and what this was really about and who they were really representing, then yes, this is just like occultism and witchcraft and mirroring. And what I can tell you is, it's like when they develop a coven, there's somebody that leads these puppet producers, and these people just agree to be in the group. They'd agree to be in the larger society because they're the buffer, the shield, because you can't know the identity of the master coven person. It's a little bit like in vampirism, how they hide the identity. Sorry, guys, I'm not trying to be too whatever, but you're probably familiar, like within vampires and things like that. Like the Lost Boys film covers this more directly, that there's this quest for who is the master of the coven of the vampires, because I guess if you get that one, then the ones that they've infected, you can reverse it or something like that, or by getting the master one, it diminishes the power of all the ones that are have fed into its larger structure, something of that nature. It's like killing the queen in the hive. Everything starts to deform after that. Or if you change out the queen in the hive with a queen of a different breed or a different type, it F's with the entire hive and they'll actually go and kill it. I mean, that's how it works. If you've ever like studied like beehive things and everything like that, yeah, like you can't just go in there and say like, oh, hey, here's this European type of honeybee, and I'm going to swap it out with an American whatever combined with this. No, they'll attack that thing. It's got to be common to the rest of the hive, right? And they'll attack it, and then they'll start to like feed a new one that they've made themselves and everything, and reject the one that you tried to place inside the hive. And so what they've done, basically, what Hollywood is kind of always about, like the ones that are on the dark side, it's about always trying to place the wrong bee, the wrong queen bee in the wrong hive over and over again, and force the deformation of the hive so that they can be in charge of the restructuring of the hive once it's back in place. It's always trying to tear things down, so in essence, they can always be in charge of its rebuilding. That's why you need to be especially acutely aware of the language they're using now with build back better. I mean, these are guys, no, they're not going to do it better. Not when you hear them using that verbiage, that's when you really have to raise an eyebrow and kind of go like, it's the same, folks. It is. And their influence is global, but it would surprise you how normal they look. It would surprise you how the people that actually do this did it without you having any clue it was them. They looked super normal the entire time because their resources, their assets are all hidden. Why? Because they don't die like you die. They just disappear. That's the best thing I can tell you. They're in this for the long haul. They don't have to care about what happens in this timeline because they're going to survive it. You need to understand what you're faced with here, and I have to tell it to you as bluntly as I can without saying too much. But that's why they can afford to do it the way they do, and that's why they don't mind looking poor for 20, 30, 40 years. They don't mind looking like they're middle class when they're filthy rich. They don't mind wearing sweatpants and looking a little bit downtrodden and things like that because guess what? They don't want you knowing how much they really have. They don't want you knowing that they can make movies like this that are mirrors of reality, that are structuring your perception of what the mafia is into something completely different than it actually is. They've tricked you into believing the mafia is something completely different than it is through these films. This is reality manifestation. They got you to believe it. Line and sinker. You thought El Chapo was a real guy too. They arrested him, didn't they? He must be real. No. People within the power elite that control the FBI and the DEA, they gave away their crisis actor. They gave away the guy that was the puppet buffer stand-in. The real cocaine dealer is still out there, still selling. That was for you to consume. That was for you to believe in. That was to trick you into thinking that there is some form of law and order and justice processes occurring when there isn't. It's just being managed. The drug flow is being managed. These films get you to believe a different reality. Now, mind you, the ugliness of it, the ugly behaviors that are in these films, like, again, thank you to my friend that brought the film Traffic to my attention, because it does show you a lot of by Steven Soderbergh, it does show you a lot of the uglier aspects of how it transitions into the sort of human trafficking economy, or rather the control of a person's will through the use of the drugs to where they would do things that normally they would never do. And that's pretty powerful, especially as it's done in the film. It's actually really ugly. But so how did it happen? How did they gain this influence? Because in ways that you're not conscious and aware of, the numerology that binds to the power of things that you fear, 13, for example, when you fear the number 13, it feeds them energy. When they trick you into fearing a day, Friday the 13th, especially when they film a movie at a geographic location that binds energy to that location, it's adding more influence to them. It's feeding more into that it feeds more bioenergy and more plasma into a central location. It is literally creating the etheric conduit. You are supplying the tunnel through your focus on them. You're giving it away to them oftentimes. And I'm not trying to encourage that by doing this. What this is designed to do and help to do is to help you unlock the process of how they got you to do this to one another, to yourself, and who did it benefit in the end, and who did it cost? They won, we all lost. Not yet, but we've been losing because we've been giving it away. We've been fearing these things, and we've been giving our energy to it. We've been giving our love to things, in sometimes cases where like they trick you into finding ways to like really be endeared by them. Their creative works oftentimes are convincingly, deceptively they can pull at your heartstrings sometimes. And I understand that. It's very challenging. How do you know when you're getting, hoodwinked a little bit bioenergetically, or it's the real deal? Challenging. But what I'm telling you is that it seems to me that what's been going on is that this location, it's an energy line that, much like what the Masons do with the number 33 and their 33-degree lines, and what ancient civilizations did with that same number prior to them, all the societies that existed going back to ancient Egypt have been doing with this 33-degree into threes as a general angle and azimuth. Is what you see with their energy work here is taking a similar concept and binding double 13s to it via a 44-degree line, because 1 3 equals 4, double 13s equals 44. 1313, when you digit sum, is each number is 4, 4. Digit root them. Each number is 13, and when you digit root is, 1 plus 3 is 4. Okay. And then I think that the 66 is by making it 44.66 degrees. Again, when you're used to these lines either being a direct 45 degrees, or when it's an etheric esoteric line done for those purposes, that they always tap into the 33s. So as far as I can tell, what they did with the development of this energy line and all the occult work at Kaiser Steel, the multiple filmmaking locations, oftentimes of horror films or things that involve killing people, or a system of justice that involves, like, being able to kill people because they've been found guilty of a crime, like Running Man. Literally, the Running Man film, guys, is about the Department of Justice, keeping in mind that I had an aunt who was a Department of Justice attorney who retired back in 2012. And a rogue system, not even rogue, officially endorsed system in the dystopian future, where people that a DOJ finds guilty of a crime can be placed into a game show called The Running Man, where they're up against these, American Gladiator type people that have very exotic weapons and can chase after them inside an open arena while a crowd cheers on. Kind of like the ending of Idiocracy, like it's impossible for them to win, kind of thing. But of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger's in it, so there's going to be an exception to the rule. I swear, I'll be back. All right. So yeah, lots of, lots of Arnold Schwarzenegger energy. That's bizarre. Wow, he did 2 films out there. He did Terminator 2 and wow. Yeah, guys, think about it. He became governor of California. Those who watch my work more frequently, I understand tonight I've been a little bit random, but hopefully you're kind of understanding where we're going with this now. This is getting really deep. So I put, what is the 44-degree kill line? It's very complicated, but I've done documentaries on YouTube. Modern Zodiac killers in Hollywood are into MK. They anchor rapes and kills using Zodiac lore binded to Kaiser Steel and Kaiser Soze, the Fontana kill line. Merrill equals the Nazi burial ground. Electromagnetic, scalar, road kills, and numerology are the way they bind energy to the location. So again, the method here is to, through these acts that put people through severe trauma, physical, sexual assaults, especially, that choosing the numerology and the pattern of it the same way serial killers choose victims. They have a very similar way that they bind energy to energy lines, and then in tandem, putting things into the collective consciousness that tap into the same energy. And so what I've observed is some of the other actors and actresses that have made works there, they weren't always the nicest people, and they weren't always the greatest. Some were pretty cool people, actually. And I think some of the people that did work around there were great. I mean, I'm not saying everybody who does things there is a killer or a rapist or anything, not even by a long shot, guys. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying the point of there being multiple acts of trauma binded to an energy location is to pump energy in the deadly orgone radiation spectrum. And I believe that Kaiser Steel was a area that was a harnesser of this energy even when the steel factory was open, and that they must have had an awareness of it, and it was probably used in tandem with the underground tunnel system that's nearby, where they were boring all the way towards Las Vegas. And there's uranium pockets underneath. And again, now you're tapping into who is the secret Hollywood family? What do they know about uranium? Where do they procure that uranium? Who are the pioneers of the area? All right. This is where things started to get kind of like whatever for me. those are some of the things that were done there, guys. Like Independence Day was filmed there, Terminator 2, RoboCop, Hell Comes to Frogtown, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, yes, and Running Man. So Running Man and Terminator 2 were two Arnold Schwarzenegger films that were filmed there. That is really trippy. I said, you need more evidence on the Zodiac Killer Mafia. Nightmare on Elm Street 2 power plant scenes were filmed at Kaiser Steel in Fontana. Fontana Avenue kill line is 44 degrees, and the first scene filmed at Kaiser is at 44 minutes into the movie. More disturbing, guys, is that if you have the awareness that, you know, again, this is Kaiser Steel that they're at. This is basically this actress is saying to him, do you pick up on any vibes here? Do you get any psychic vibrations here? I mean, adding even more, like, whatever. And she looks a lot like Meryl Streep, like she could be from her bloodline. But you notice these scenes are all 44:27. That's Kaiser Steel. 44 minutes, 5 seconds is them entering the mill. She tells them just to concentrate. I put The Running Man was filmed at Kaiser Steel in Fontana, California. I've done a series of articles from Kaiser Steel about how many Hollywood films use Kaiser Steel as a film location and why that might be. It all ties into what is going on today, the uranium mob. And again, guys, just to help you understand this concept better. So this is Kaiser Steel. Let me make sure you can actually see what I'm doing here. Okay, you can. All right. So you can see here where this is Kaiser Steel, and this is where I filmed, like, especially like right around here is where I did some of my articles where I was driving around and filming in front of them or to the side of them. And basically what's happening, I think, here is that because of the proximity of the steel plant to Fontana Avenue, you'll notice here that Merrill Avenue right up here that's where all my mother's side of the family basically is buried. I can prove this, guys. My grandmother, my great-grandmother, a whole bunch of their brothers and sisters, all buried in Merrill, Oregon. Again, they anchor energy. They bridge energy. They use vibratory frequencies within language to bind energy. That includes to sacrifice and sex ritual. So again, my father's family is from Fontana, but my mother's family is from Merrill. So it's a bizarre kind of dynamic that you have here where Merrill is in the north representing my mother's side of the family. And then you got this whole angular line here at 44.66 degrees that extends from Valley to Merrill. And it all forms a great big letter Z. And then you get a whole bunch of these series of these small triangles, hourglass patterns, and things like that as you dig deeper. And you'll find they do this kind of bizarre, like not just going up, down, left, right, like north, south, east, west. They do these oddly disharmonic angular lines in a lot of different places, including Tule Lake, where the Nazi concentration camp is. That's where we imported about 1,000 Nazis in 1945. And again, that's where my mother's family's from. And again, that's around the time that her and my father were born. So what am I supposed to make of this? I don't know, guys. But all I know is that this is extremely close to my father's family's front door, this whole facility. And again, a lot of these are great people. I've known a lot of them. I'm pretty sure quite a few of them are clueless about what I'm talking here. So this isn't some sort of damnation of anybody or anything. It's just like I'm asking, like, where does this lead back to? And I think it's because we have a secret genetic connection to Leon Oskin that quite a few people in my family are unaware of. Those who are aware of it are obviously in on the secret and get it. And I would be curious to know who they are because nobody's ever self-identified to me. But Kaiser means emperor or king. And so Kaiser Steel, if you think about it, Henry J. Kaiser formed Kaiser Permanente as the first HMO, and now it's the world's largest health organization. that should tell you a little bit about what we're experiencing right now with reality manifestation, everybody being scared of COVID. And, you know, that should be enough for you to go off of there. Now, what do you want to do about it now that you know the truth? That's what you really need to get down to here, folks. What do you do about it now that you know the truth, if you can understand exactly what I'm telling you? Because we have solutions, we have ways of reversing all of this, but part of you has to get that you've experienced something that's highly occulted, that involves a manipulation of the collective consciousness, all of our biofields, getting us to focus and concentrate on a series of data sets that they tricked us into focusing on for many, many years. And we've given them and fed them our energy. Guys, I'm not like down on Hollywood or all those things. Oh, Michael, if you only knew what was going on, man. The best thing I can tell you is that I know something to that degree is going on, and it's being hidden, because I know a lot of efforts are made to hide genetics. My birth certificate has a lot of data that just looks ridiculously false. My vaccination records are well, like I was born in 74, and I go from having a vaccination in 1974 to having one in 1972 to having one again in 1976. So it's like they took one that was actually a 1971 vaccination certificate and, you know, changed all the ones to fours, and then forgot and left the two in there, and that, you know, it's like out of order. Like, you know, like, so a lot of the falsification of my records don't make sense. I tried looking up the guy that birthed me. His name was Henry J. Ty Digsman. Guys, Henry J. Kaiser founded Kaiser Permanente and Kaiser Steel. And my birth certificate says Henry J. Ty Digsman. I'll let you figure that out. See, frankly, it's bullshit. But that ain't my fault. Somebody's going to have to ask my parents how that happened. They won't tell me. For the record, haven't talked to either one of them in over 2 years. I'm a 47-year-old man whose parents exist out there, who this exact issue has caused this many problems to where I have I'm kind of like banned from my own family, just simply because I'm willing to discuss all of this openly and just say, I don't know what this means, but it's got to mean something. So I would really just appreciate if somebody would clear the record. But to date, I'm the only person that will talk about it, and nobody else has stepped forward to just say, like, okay, here's what's wrong, here's what's right. And the times that they have, it's only been done in private to me to tell me something like, you're crazy. And, or if they don't say that, they'll say something like going, well, you shouldn't be saying that. Actually, they've stopped kind of saying you're crazy anymore because they know I'm not. This looks batshit crazy, but I didn't make it that way. I just had to be the one that communicated what's going on. So yeah, something weird like that is going on with DNA. I know that they're close to the things that have historically managed the Human Genome Project, which is to say that, like, my father transitioned to the Department of Energy in 1985 in his career, and that was the same time the Department of Energy and the National Institute of Health, the NIH, were the ones who were basically controlling the Human Genome Project within the United States. If you don't believe me, you can look all this up on Wikipedia. You can find everything involving the Human Genome Project there, and you'll see that everything to do with the United States project began pretty much right on the dot when my father went to Hanford Nuclear Reservation with us and my entire family in 1985. So something involving my genes, I think, is highly relevant behind the scenes and is kept a secret from me included. And I just don't like it because, I mean, I understand why they would want to, but see, at this point, I feel like something's being exploited from me. Like, I don't get, what do you want to say? Like somebody else is reaping the benefits from whatever it is, because it sure as hell ain't me. I mean, I could tell you, I've been, you know, I've been the person trying to, like, clear the record and everything like that, and I probably suffer the most financially out of anybody inside this family. So And that's bizarre because I used to actually have a very successful career, was very respected in the wireless industry. Again, none of that changed really. It's just that my information sometimes challenges the status quo. So, being able to get back into something like that isn't the easiest thing to do. I have to have a more creative way to do it if I wanted to. And it would have to be through doing something like solving the hacks. It'd have to be doing something like, investigating psychoenergetic issues and weaponization of frequencies for people in a more public service type fashion, or at least in a contractable way, like to where a person could hire me and a staff of people to do that on a greater level. But yeah, just, to that point, I don't trust any of the records surrounding my birth. So I know there's something weird going on there. So I put, if you go to Fontana Avenue in Fontana, California, set an anchor point at the start of the road, it aims 44.66 degree and winds up in Las Vegas. Was the Fred Fontana reference in Vegas Vacation with Chevy Chase a simple coincidence? And again, guys, it's weird because I didn't know about the Fontana reference in Vegas Vacation until long after I did my material about Chevy Chase. You can find that. I did a whole thing, a decrypt of You Can Call Me Al and Paul Simon and Chevy Chase. And I show you kind of photo comparisons of me and Chevy Chase because people used to say I looked like him when I was a kid. And it's kind of hard to argue, like, especially when I was in junior high, our faces did look a lot alike. Not as much now, but yeah, especially when I was a kid. Oh, and to that point, if you want the proof there, I said that thing about Henry J. Ty Digsman being on my birth certificate, then Henry J. Kaiser being the founder of Kaiser Permanente. Now, guys, if my father was born 1 mile away from the front entrance of Kaiser Steel, him and all of his family worked at Kaiser Steel, basically. That's what he told me. Like, that's a big thing for them. They all worked at the steel plant. Fontana High School, where they all went to school, its mascot is the Steelers because they were a steel mill town. So, guys, is my birth certificate authentic? If you were me and you got to be 47 years old and you found your family close, really, really close to all these things, including this whole Henry J. Kaiser thing, like, I'm pretty sure that someone in my family is related to Leon Oskin, and Leon Oskin has some parallel to Henry J. Kaiser. It's like they're mirrors, and it's like part of a larger coven structure where there's one like head of the mafia or the don of everything, and all of these other people are just, buffers to the don. And so Leon Oskin, Henry J. Kaiser, buffers. Or maybe one of them was authentically, quote, the don. And if you know who he really is, what his name that he went by in daily life is, like I think I do, but I won't say out loud right now, that would be a sign that somebody within my family, yeah, was the family. At least one. But again, that's a highly, you can understand why that would make me a little bit unfavorable at certain family functions at this point, and why my parents haven't talked to me in 2 years. So, but there it is, guys. I mean, you can see, I'll show you the picture of the birth certificate. J.H. Ty Digsman, MD. And then I've done deeper research on this character, and he was allegedly a doctor named Henry J. Ty Digsman. I was like, you got to be shitting me if you're going to tell me that that was really the person. They just both happen to have HJ, Henry J. Not just HJ as their initials, Henry J. That's how they always do this. They'll repeat it over and over again. Then a lot of my information revolves around Henry Silva, you know. And so effectively what I think this is about, guys, is that the way that that energy line operates is that because fear in humans emits plasma, emits bioenergy, which programs bioplasma, which when placed into collections, okay, the Zodiac killer, when he was terrorizing, when it as a group, I think the whole lore behind the Zodiac is bullshit. Everything we've been told what it is bullshit. It's really a bloodline family, whatever, series of actions. And the person that we've all grown accustomed to as, quote, the killer, the Arthur Lee Allen suspect, has always been a work of fiction. And that these crimes have effectively been both works of fiction in many cases, where law enforcement even was in the know that they had been fictionalized. And part of it was designed effectively to get people to false report. They wanted some of these fake crimes to literally reel people in who would just simply report on things and waste the time of law enforcement. And then once they do, they're unsympathetic to law enforcement. And then the real Zodiacs would take care of the riffraff. And most of the cops are like, hey, we're sick of these assholes wasting our time anyways, calling in false reports on some shit that didn't even happen. Then they proceed to do real Zodiac kills on the people. Bait traps. It's a little bit like they admit to this in the film Exorcist 3 by William Peter Blatty. He wrote the screenplay to Exorcist 3, okay? And in it, they talk about a Gemini killer, which is effectively the Zodiac killer. And the cop says that, yes, amongst all of the real cases, they planted fake ones specifically so they could filter crazy people from people with real tips. I would argue that what happens to those, quote, crazy people is they are basically then electromagnetically, psychoenergetically, rather psychotronically, or with scalar weaponry, all of the above, soft killed, because they're going to be unsympathetic to law enforcement across the board. And they've just simply transitioned that system of sacrifice and soft kill assassinations into a broader spectrum of people that will be unsympathetic to law enforcement by falsification of data. Now we have internet protocol addresses, phone numbers, and all different data sets that can be metadata doped, which means if you want to make somebody look like a scumbag, it's very easy. If a scumbag wants to look like they do nothing but visit Sesame Street websites all day long, they can make it look that way. So we all know that trusting digital forensics anymore is a dicey situation. That's, if you don't have a greater level of sophistication, you can be tricked into believing somebody's good when they're bad or bad when they're good. See, you just can't trust them flat on their face. But what's happening in current times are the modern Zodiacs are using these exact forms of digital forensics doping to make certain people unsympathetic while they get soft kill assassinated in their homes with electromagnetic and scalar weaponry. The modern Zodiacs are killing people left and right with the energy grid by amplifying a person's apartment while they're inside it during COVID, for example. You have a 60 hertz field that you're surrounded by. A smart meter can amplify specific outlets inside your house. You can experience an electrical field that your neighbors would not even sense. You would effectively be sitting there getting slow tased and damn near losing your mind while this field entrains upon you from the smart meter into the wires, which are all copper inside your home, and train upon you. And if somebody's made up a highly realistic story about your background that doesn't get verified, looks real enough to trick the average person that's in law enforcement, they might go like, I got better time than to save this scumbag. And that's what the Zodiacs specialize in. Turning as many people into the boy that cried wolf or the deplorable or whatever they can do to make you unsympathetic, to make it look like you're the kind of person that should not be trusted. Then they can get away with basically soft kill assassinating you while everybody just kind of looks on and does nothing about it. and they brag about it. The usual suspects. Why is the big villain that the greatest trick the devil ever played was convincing you the devil did not exist? Kaiser Soze. Kaiser Soze. Do you get it? It's a cipher. Operation Paperclip Nazi bloodlines combined with the Hollywood and uranium interests are in control of this machine. They are your domestic criminals. Okay? That's why we're in a dicey situation right now, because guess what? They can claim freedom of speech on certain things that have zero to do with freedom of expression. Their use of radio frequency has zero to do with communication. Yet there they are side by side with things that involve free expression and things that involve communication and aiming things relative to radiation from an antenna. They have satellite communications. See, media organizations can tap into all of these resources to broadcast their signals. What else can they do with them? We know they weaponize information. They've been doing it for the last couple years aggressively, trying to get us to believe a narrative about something that does not exist, except that they made it exist. And how did they do it? They kept us locked up inside for 2 years and made it manifest by aggressively telling us that it exists. And you know what? That is the power, ladies and gentlemen, of the collective hive mind. You help them make it a reality. Do you get it? And I pray that you do. Anybody who can understand me right now, I hope you really get what I've told you. Kaiser Permanente, Kaiser Soze, Kaiser. Who is managing your reality? Who is managing your perception of reality? Who is bending physical reality and literally manifesting illnesses that would not have existed? You know what this effectively has become? I won't say, you know what I'm talking about, though. It's the flu with these words and ideologies binded and attached to them through trauma. Delta. It's a symbol, a powerful one. It's a common one. Oh man, the use of these symbols. Oh my God, it was done with intention. I can assure you. So I said I also submitted information about how the Zodiac Killer binded two of their claimed homicides of Paulie Stein and Cherry Joe Bates via a 131.3 degree line that crosses over the area of Kaiser, Steel, and Fontana. To date, my data has been strangely ignored by both the media and the FBI. Why do you think that is, guys? I mean, honestly, do you honestly think that this is irrelevant, that these things just aren't happening? Or are they just selectively choosing to ignore it? This is where it really got, I just discovered that Steel Town was also filmed at Kaiser Steel by cinematographer Charles P Boyle. That name is a cipher. My family was raised about a mile from that plant at an intersection that pretty much is that name. Is that a coincidence? Or are we really getting down to what Leon Oskin is? What everything that grew around him became? He effectively changed Hollywood secretly. He was the Don. But he didn't go by Leon Oskin in his daily life. He went by another name, and they all do. And they always hide how much power they actually have. But you'll see here it says Kaiser Steel, or rather Steel Town, filmed in 1952, location Fontana, Kaiser Steel Mill, California, United States, by Charles P Boyle. Guys, I'm not making this up. Now I got to show you something here. Hang on really quick. I got to change something here. All right. So again, I had a feeling like this was kind of the thing. So this is really close to Kaiser Steel. So if you go on Cherry Avenue, again, there's, that's one of the ones they always do use in each location. Live Oak, Cherry, Redwood, Boyle. It's weird. How did this happen? I mean, how did this bind to this thing? Is it because of the DNA, or was there focused energy work, or what? How did it actually happen? But here's where I really got hip to what was going on, because I'm not going to get too specific here, except to say that this was the area, this was the neighborhood that they were, they grew up in. And, so when I find out that, again, my grandmother's passed, so she doesn't even own this property anymore. But Charles P Boyle, who was really, if Leon Oskin is who I think he is, and he was doing cinematography under different aliases, then who is Charles P Boyle? Well, there's Charles Street, and there's Boyle. So see how this works? The streets, Charles, Boyle. Cinematographer of Steel Town, filmed at Kaiser Steel. Well, I was right. Am I wrong? If you were me and everything else had led up to this, what would you be thinking? And again, I'm going to say this over and over again, man. My experiences, guys, I know this neighborhood. I've been here. I enjoyed many experiences in this area with my family. Again, my grandmother's dead now. She does not own the house anymore. Throat cancer many years ago, passed on. And all I can tell you is, in these parcels of land and everything like that, in these front yards, that I had some of the best times I ever had in my life. But I don't think I'm wrong about secret Hollywood infrastructure, the secret uranium economy, about where everything kind of leads back to historically, and the use of buffers, aliases, and fake names. This is the ecosystem. It's literally just like The Usual Suspects. Watch The Usual Suspects. Just the ending, if anything else. You'll see how it all worked. Spoilers here, guys. But at the end of The Usual Suspects, you learn that the entire time, this story that was being spun was by Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey was Kaiser Soze. He was talking about himself, but he was telling it all by just simply looking at different objects in the room. And that's how he picked his character names and aliases of lawyers, streets, towns, everything. He would simply look at the, like, oh no, my lawyer was his lawyer was Kobayashi, and oh no, it was in this town called. And so at the end of the movie, the detective is going through and going, wait a minute. And he looks down and sees that the cup says Kobayashi. He looks and like every name this guy had used in his story that he just told him had been extracted just by looking at different objects in the room and making the story up. And then he has the realization that he just let the devil walk away. Chaz Palminteri. Interesting. Chaz Palminteri plays the guy that makes that discovery. And remember, guys, a lot of my data revealed to you the whole ecosystem behind the crisis actors and all the nonsense that happened at the CHOP and Chaz areas. Remember? Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone? Chaz. During the whole Antifa BLM riots in Seattle, also connected to the family. One of the main guys at the Chaz that was like protesting everything for Antifa looks like he could be the grandson of Leon Oskin. Compare their lips, compare their facial features. Who's really in control of the narratives? They're out there running LARPs on you guys. They're LARPing you. They're false flagging you. For what? To get you to believe in things, to get you focused and concentrated on things, to get you to give them energy, to get you to believe them without even knowing how much you're actually buying into and believing. Even when you're cynical, you're still believing so much bullshit. Sorry, guys, I don't mean to like lecture anybody, but really, I mean, I'm going to have to end it soon here. Okay. So, that's kind of where I wanted to leave it, I guess. You know, I mean, what would you do if you came across the information? There you see it, Charles Boyle. There's the house. It's right next to Kaiser Steel. There's the Twitter post again. Charles P Boyle. That name is a cipher. Do you believe me or not? If, you know, guys, somebody just played me. What is that Harry Belafonte song, you know? Okay, I believe you. Jump in the line, rock your body on time. Okay, I believe you. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear that. I want to hear that. And then once we get past that, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? See, because if I figured it out and I've got the DNA link and you know what I would like to see happen. I just want to see as many people come out of this happy, healthy. I want to see our country thriving. I want to see us getting along with the rest of the world. You know, I don't want trauma. I don't, and moreover, I would like to see our society have a greater awareness of these exact processes. And all I can tell you is that I still hold out hope that some of this was a grand design for a larger lesson to show everybody something in a way that was maybe they wouldn't have learned otherwise. I'm open to that. I don't know. You know, I really hope not, because it's just been such a tragic couple of years or whatever, and things have been pretty bad. But in my sometimes I pray that it really was all illusory, some of the worst parts of it. But unfortunately, I don't think it is. But I think the way we change this is by learning the techniques that was used by them and sort of just reverse engineering them. And it's surprisingly easy to do. And today I put out an article that's called West Coast, East Coast, you know, or East Coast, West Coast, something like that, you know, brainwave. It's all brainwave and bioenergy. And it is, because everything I've told you here and what was done was a manipulation, a bending, a changing of our perceived reality by tapping into the core functions of how we process what reality is. And it's in our ignorance as a society is why we haven't been able to rise above it and change it historically. And I'm just sort of like opening, declaring it here that is changing. It is going to continue to change for the betterment of humanity, that people are going to gain far more awareness, that I'm putting this out there. I mean, I am saying it. I'm stating it as a fact. People are becoming aware. people are getting smarter. We are going to prosper. We are going to make it out of this better than we ever were before. I believe this wholeheartedly. I think that we're evolving. I think that we're actually increasing our intelligence as a collective consciousness. I think people are getting braver, smarter, better, all across the board. Okay. And so I'm not giving credit to the people who did this to us. No, we did this in spite of them. Give credit to yourselves. You all rose above it. We're all rising above it. So I want to end with that. Thank you very much tonight. I appreciate it. Have a good one.